Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to French Dip Empire. Are you there? Can you hear me? I see you, movie of the week, in the chat. Can you hear me? On the mic, do I sound good? Is my volume good there, movie of the week? I can see you in the chat. I know you can hear me, or you should be able to hear me. And I see that you say you can already smell the intelligence links from the title. You can hear me. Okay, great. Well, this episode isn't going to be so much about intelligence, just about, mostly about gossip. Thank you, movie of the week, for saying that I'm sounding good, since I'm still somewhat getting over a cold, I think, and my throat has not been exactly what I need for streaming and broadcasting, but I'm making do with my steaming hot cup of, or not quite steaming, but still pretty warm cup of English breakfast tea. Needed some nice strong caffeine to get me going today. So, yes. Yeah, 30-second lag on the chat. Thank you, movie of the week. I guess I've tended to take that for granted. So, yes, if it takes me a second or two to respond, you know that it's not that I haven't seen you. It's that I'm a little bit delayed, at least, or the chat is delayed, or I'm delayed. I'm delayed. My speech is delayed. The chat is delayed. Well, whatever. A little bit of a delay. But I am keeping an eye on the chat, so you can absolutely talk to me. And today's topic, to reiterate, because you're a little bit ahead of things, movie of the week. I think you have read the description, the title and the description. And Zac Goldsmith, Baron Goldsmith of Richmond Park, actually, British Baron Goldsmith, is rumored to be getting married again. This would be marriage number 3, bride number 3. And his lovely bride is a relative of Ian Fleming. She's Hum Fleming. Interesting name. Hum, like, when you make noise with your mouth closed. Hum. Yes, Hum Fleming, the great niece of spy novelist Ian Fleming. And Zac Goldsmith, who himself is a kind of a Nepo baby. Here's movie of the week in the chat. I just saw Goldsmith and Fleming, and new spies abounded. Well, who knows? There may be new, I don't know about spies, but new spy babies, perhaps, because Zac is certainly a potent man. He has several children of his own, much like his brother and his father and their father before them. The Goldsmith boys like to make babies, and they like the ladies, and they like to make babies with lots of ladies. And so the Goldsmith family is extensive and interesting, very accomplished, very interesting. Movie of the week says, yes. Things that make you go, And apparently one of those is Hum is making Zac go, perhaps all the way to the altar. So let me pull up, while you're here, there you go. That's Zac. I think that's a pretty current photo. He used to be a blonde man. Now he is a silver fox, a silver daddy. And he basically looks the same here. There's young Zac doing that little Princess Diana-esque, Prince William-esque mouth purse. If you notice, the purse of the lips. Maybe he's going to go hum. But anyway, that's young Zac. A little dirty blondish, I guess, hair. And now here's current-ish year Baron Zac, or Zac Baron Goldsmith. He wouldn't be Baron. That's not accurate. But Lord Goldsmith, Zac, there he is. More current year. And so to explain who is, if you're not familiar already with Zac, who's a bit of a British tabloid staple, as are various members of his family, his sister Jemima, who was married to a very famous cricketer turned politician and had dated a very, very famous and controversial comedian. Oh, there's movie of the week in the chat. The white hair doesn't look right on him. His face is too young, and he can't rock the Anderson Cooper thing. Aw, poor Zach. I guess I see what you mean. He does look a bit washed out with the silver hair. Yeah, I mean, yeah, he does look pretty young, despite the, the crow's feet. But that just means he's smiled a lot, right? A lot of smiling in his life. He's a very, very wealthy, privileged man, so I suppose he's had a lot to smile about in his life. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, he looks pretty good, for his age, considering. He's not that old, actually. He's 49, I want to say. Has he had his birthday yet? Yes, he has. He's 49. So, I don't know. I think that looks pretty good for 49. He's just prematurely grayed. It's a thing that happens, sometimes movie of the week. It can be genetic, Some people go gray or white early due to, say, stress, like the late Barbara Bush, the former American First Lady. They say she went white, started losing her hair color after pigmentation after her daughter died tragically and young of, I think it was leukemia. And Zach, well, I don't think Zach has had any tragedy to compare to that exactly, but, his face doesn't look old, but his hair does. Well, yes, his hair is silver. And yeah, so I suppose get me some soy sauce stat. No, movie of the week. Zach could not dye his hair with soy sauce color because he was never that dark. See, he was just dirty blonde. I don't think he would want the India ink head dipping to blacken his hair. He would look pretty ridiculous. But anyway, so enough about Zach and his hair, his silver daddy hair. So let's backtrack a little bit. Who is Zac Goldsmith? We will go to our trusty Wikipedia page. Wikipedia is a much maligned source because it can be edited and is often edited by people who are adding. So people add strange things. They add jokes sometimes, and sometimes they just cut out information that's perfectly valid, but for whatever reason, people decide no, it isn't. So Wikipedia, they're usually okay for things like basic information, dates, names, and the nice thing is you can at least click on the sources of the material, and if you're lucky and they're not paywalled or the links have not disappeared, if they were properly archived, say, then you can actually go and read the source and decide for yourself if the information has been properly presented on Wikipedia or nay. I don't know that most people do that, but I actually do, because I like to do research and I like to read and learn things. So Zac Goldsmith, who is Zac? Well, this is his father, Sir James Goldsmith, Jimmy. He was quite the guy back in the day. As you can see, he died in 1997, but he was very famous and well-known, around the world, primarily British. You can say, it says he's a French-British financier, tycoon, and politician, who was a member of the Goldsmith family. And the Goldsmith family is actually a larger, more far-ranging and sort of famous family than just Sir James's branch of the family. As you can see, the Wikipedia entry here has the Goldschmidt family, the original German name, and they are largely known for being a banking family who are, married into other wealthy and powerful European banking families. As that's just the kinds of things that happen. Law families marry law families, musical families marry musical families, banking families marry banking families, and the Goldsmith family, or originally Goldschmidt family, are closely tied to, for example, the Rothschild family. And although there is an historical connection between the Goldschmidt/Goldsmith family and the Rothschild family historically in the past, there is also a much closer relationship between the two families currently that involves Zac and his younger brother Ben and a couple of Rothschild sisters that Zac and Ben married and divorced. But we'll get to that in just a second. So if you look down, you can see that this family tree, which starts with a Goldschmidt, and it goes down here. And if you look, this is James Goldsmith, Sir Jimmy, and you could see his father, his grandfather. They all have hypertext links on their names, and that means that they have their own Wikipedia entry pages because they were that powerful and important that they are worth noting with their very own pages. Adolf Goldschmidt, a banker, and then his son Frank Goldsmith, this being Sir Jimmy's father, and his mother, as you can see, Marcel, French. That's where the sort of, the part of the French British, and then their children were Edward, who was known as Teddy. He was, there you go, very distinguished looking gentleman. Probably his best known child would be Cleo Goldsmith, who was a little bit of an actress back in the day, but she's very, her, I guess, even greater claim to fame, perhaps, is that she was once upon a time married to this guy, Mark Shand. Unfortunately, there is no photograph of him. Well known for promoting the conservation of elephants, and he started as you can see, Wildlife Foundation, Elephant Family. I remember they did a thing in New York where they had a bunch of, I think it was in New York City, a bunch of like decorated elephants, elephant statues, not actual elephants, not animals that were painted, although that's a thing that happens, but like elephant statues, I think they were, or they were eggs or something with elephants painted on them. I don't know. It was a big art thing, and it was in support of his charity. Shand related to Camilla. Yes, movie of the week in the chat. You've gotten ahead of me, but if you were reading the Wikipedia page on the screen, you could see that. Yes, Mark Shand, on his own, known as a writer and conservationist, but he is was, because he is deceased now, the brother of Queen Camilla. Camilla, the Queen Consort of the United Kingdom. So we go from Camilla, her brother Mark. Mark was the ex-husband of Cleo Goldsmith, who is the daughter of Teddy Goldsmith, and Teddy was the brother of Sir Jimmy, and Sir Jimmy is Zac's dad. So this is Zac's late uncle, and as you can see, was the founding editor and publisher of The Ecologist, which defunct now, what I'm learning. Was a British environmental publication, and as you can see, one of the former editors, Zac Goldsmith. Wonder how he got the job. So other members of the Goldsmith family are active in conservation. Zac's brother Ben, I know, has talked a lot about the rewilding of the British countryside, which is, there are positive and negative aspects to that, I suppose. It's always a nice idea to try to rehabilitate nature, get the wildlife back. But if you recall, England's wildlife included things like, a very long time ago, things like wolves. I don't think you would want to really have a vigorous wolf population in England, in the United Kingdom. That sounds a little dangerous, but who knows? Maybe you can reintroduce wolves and whatnot into the wild. It seems like there could be some conflict there with, I don't know, residents, farmers, etc. But they're trying to figure it out and make it all work. They want to live in a natural wonderland while everybody else is just trying to scrape by without the billions of dollars that the Goldsmiths have to play around with their ideas for how things should be. But, whatever. Everybody's got to have a hobby. And they certainly have enough money and free time to pursue theirs to their heart's content. So let's take a look at James Goldsmith a very, very fascinating, it's a very kind of crummy photo of him. I'll find a better photo over here of Sir James Goldsmith. And he was a big financier. Oops. And he kind of was one of those guys who back in like the 80s was Mr. Big Corporate push people around kind of guy. I know that's not exactly, that wasn't just a thing for the 80s. That's a thing for all time. As long as there's been business, there have been people like that. Yes. He was kind of like if you see the movie Wall Street, not the Michael Douglas character, but there's, I forget who plays, what actor plays the character, but I think there's like a British character or something that comes in and wants to do a hostile takeover. Was it of the airline, the air company that Charlie Sheen's father, well, Martin Sheen, his real father, played his character's father in the movie Wall Street, but there's like a corporate takeover. Movie of the week, I think you are familiar with this. And Charlie Sheen's character thinks, Bud Fox thinks this is a great idea and tries to sell his father on it. And his father's like, this is a terrible idea. These people are weasels. Well, that foreign, like the British business guy who comes in, I think one of the people that he was based on was Jimmy Goldsmith. So in that era of, excuse me, corporate takeovers and, you know, I have a lot of money and I'm just going to come in and push and get what I want. And, you know, they would buy companies up, tear them apart, take the assets, lay off all the employees, you know, that kind of thing, all that, you know, leverage buyout and corporate takeover stuff that was going on like in the 80s, I guess 70s into 80s. He was one of those guys. That was, you know, Sir James Goldsmith was very powerful, very master of the universe kind of guy. This was a guy who was going to do what he wanted, say what he wanted, get his way, like it or not. And I guess one of those guys you could either love or hate. You could admire him for his drive, for his ambition, for his, you know, well, his cojones, if YouTube will let me say that word and not ding me for saying something naughty. But you could also despise him for mostly the same qualities, his brashness, his arrogance, his inability to, you know, it's his way or the highway. And it seemed that was true personally as well as in business. And I don't want to get into politics. I don't like politics. I do not advocate for any, you know, side of politics, and I don't care what other people want to do as long as they're not hurting anyone. It's none of my business. But James Goldsmith, just as a sort of point of interest, was here, hold on, wait. I need to take a quick break, check something, and I will be right back as soon as my cursor will allow me. And we are back. Okay, sorry for that extended break. We had some technical difficulties, and now that seems to have been resolved. Where I left off, and movie of the week, if you're in the chat, you may be able to tell me if my volume is good and there aren't any more noise problems coming through. If you can hear me, let me know. But where we left off, we were talking about Zac Goldsmith and a little bit of background about his father. And briefly, I didn't want to go into politics, but I did think it was interesting that Sir James Goldsmith, oh, here, I'll go back and show him. Boom. No noise issues. Okay, thank you, movie of the week. But yeah, Sir James Goldsmith was one of those original, like British anti-EU advocates. Are you an advocate if you're an anti-advocate? Advocating for staying out of it, I guess, would be the point of view. It wouldn't be a let's leave. It would be a let's not join in the first place. But then it was kind of funny because even though he didn't want Britain to join the EU, he represented France in the European Parliament, which I don't know if that's hypocrisy. I don't know if that's what's good for France is bad for England, or maybe as being a member of European Parliament for France, he was kind of like, okay, maybe this wouldn't work for England. I really don't know. A British nationalist. I don't know if, I don't know if he called himself that. I don't remember from when he was alive, but of course, I was fairly young when he died, and I certainly was not, involved in British political discussions when I was younger or now. As I said, I don't like politics. I don't want to argue politics. I'm not British. I don't live in Europe. It is none of my business what they want to do with their country or their union or whatever. He wanted to ruin France by keeping them in the EU. Well, in that case, then maybe he was a good British patriot, because we all know the animosity that the Brits have had for the French, despite the fact that for some reason the Brits seem to like to use French words for their half of their produce. Dislike the French, but they use French terminology. Really not sure why. But anyway, so Sir Jimmy Goldsmith, his politics aren't nearly as interesting as his love life. And Sir James Goldsmith, you can see why he'd be a lady killer. Look at that face. Who couldn't resist those eyes? Who couldn't resist the that freckled skull? But Sir James Goldsmith, he liked the ladies. He liked the ladies. Here's the young lady killer, Jimmy Goldsmith, dashing in his uniform there. Here he is again. Oh, what a charmer. So, James Goldsmith, I will go back to Wikipedia because it has the quickest timeline, I guess, to show you. I'm scrolling down because I don't care about the politics. Okay, personal life. Now, here's where the family and their romantic entanglements get interesting. Goldsmith was married 3 times, possibly much like Zac is about to be. At 20, very young, he married 17-year-old Bolivian heiress Maria Isabel Patiño y Borbón, the daughter of tin magnate Antonio Patiño, by his wife Maria Cristina de Bourbon y Bosch-Larousse, 3rd Duchess of Durcal. Very, very, very eminent. 20, married a 17-year-old. They basically eloped, as you can see from the next sentence, which I don't really want to repeat this, because it's pretty offensive to more than one group of people and anyone with kind sensibilities, let's say. If you can read along, it says, when Goldsmith proposed the marriage to Antonio Patino, it is alleged that his future father-in-law replied, quote, "We are not in the habit of marrying," and he referred to James Goldsmith's religion, which I'm not going to say this because I don't want to repeat a slur, but suffice to say that his future first father-in-law, who was, if I had to guess, Roman Catholic, was not happy with his daughter marrying outside the faith, and specifically the faith that James Goldsmith belonged to. And to his credit, Goldsmith clapped back at Senor Patino and said, quote, "Well, I am not in the habit of marrying," and he used a term to refer to Patino's ancestry. And as it says, the story, if true, is typical of Goldsmith's attempts at humor. Wow, not the most tolerant guy. Well, you know, a lot of people have their preferences. Not all of them are kind, compassionate, and generous. And who knows, maybe he just wanted to really be insulting to this guy. Maybe Antonio Patino just really didn't like Jimmy Goldsmith and wanted to kick him, you know, in a sensitive spot. And so Jimmy, to his credit, went, "Oh yeah, well, if you're gonna," it basically turned into a verbal game of Rochambeau. Let's both kick one another where it hurts. And, you know, I don't know, but Antonio Patino was not obviously a tin magnate. He was a very wealthy man, not a shrinking violet. And even though James Goldsmith was only 20, he was no shrinking violet either. And so James Goldsmith and Isabel Patino were, oh, here's the photo. I was trying to find a photo, but I don't have to look it up. It's right here. This is Jimmy and his first wife, Isabel. She does not look like a 17-year-old girl per se, but people dressed and looked much more mature and sophisticated in previous decades. And so here they are looking he's very tall and dapper in his three-piece suit, and she is very small and elegant in her, looks like some kind of leopard or jaguar print fur jacket, which of course is not kind to the animals, but nonetheless, back in the day, they weren't exactly doing the fake fur. I guarantee you that was a real fur jacket. So they were married, and they had a baby, which they named Isabel, just like her mommy. But tragically, Isabel Patino Goldsmith, the mother, died. As it says, they eloped in January 1954, and she had a hemorrhage, a cerebral hemorrhage, while 7 months pregnant, and died. And Isabel, the baby, was delivered by cesarean section. And this was obviously very tragic, very painful. They were married less than a year. I mean, you know, 7 months. Well, okay, if they were married in January 1954 and she died in May, and had perhaps they had to get married to legitimate the child. It seems like the math adds up, but so we'll never know what happened there, or what would have happened. I mean, in their future, would he have stayed with Isabel? Would they have had more children? Would they have eventually split up? My bet would be on the last option, based on Jimmy's track record. So as you can see from the next sentence, Goldsmith next married Ginette Léry, with whom he had a son and daughter. They divorced in 1978, but shared a house in Paris until his death. Now, they don't show it here, unfortunately. They don't have the children linked, But if we go back to that family tree over here, let's see if they show it here. Yes. Okay, so you can see here, James Goldsmith was married to Isabel Patino. Oh, that just linked back to Antenor. But, while we're here, we'll take a look at it. So this was Antenor Patino, sorry for going back a little bit, the Bolivian tin, the king of tin. And tin being such a kind of, I guess if you're going to be a king of anything, go ahead, be king of whatever. I'm the empress of French dip, so if you're going to be the king of tin, I suppose that's good enough. But I think I'd rather be the king or queen or empress of a nicer metal than tin. Tin is, well, I don't know. Is it the least of metals? What's a lesser metal? Aluminum? Would you rather be the king of aluminum or aluminium, as they say in England? Well, anyway, so looking at, because I'm curious, the ancestry of Antenor's wife, Isabel's mother, a Bourbon. And if you were here for our previous stream, I was speaking of the Bourbon family, who, whether you spell it like this or like this, the French spelling Bourboon, or the Spanish spelling Borbon, we're talking about the house that gave us royals in France, Spain, Luxembourg, and Italy. A very, very royal, eminent house. And as you can see, Isabel Patino Goldsmith's mother was one of them, was a Bourbon. Oh, movie of the week, weighing in on the metals discussion. Well, if you need to make ceilings or bronze, for tin? Yeah. Well, when I think tin cup, tin ear, tin roof rusted, doesn't sound as cool. Like, okay, are they going to make a song called All Tin Everything? I don't think so. Yeah. But, as I said, if you're going to be the king of anything, I guess go ahead and be the king of it. It would be better to be the king of tin than to be the duke of gold. Maybe? I'd have to think about that one. Anyway, so Doña Maria Cristina de Bourbon y Bosch-Labrousse, the third Duchess of Durcal, a relative of Spanish monarch Alfonso XIII. That guy with the stash. Look at him. Check out that stash. That was Alfonso XIII. He was married. He figures into the Queen Victoria's descendants milieu. Here, one second. Let me go back. Okay, so as you can see here, the Patinos, through their mother, were the Patino daughters, Isabel and her older sister, Maria Cristina. Her older sister got to be the Duchess after their mother, and they have French aristocracy descended from them. And then here you see Isabel and the Goldsmiths, and that's her daughter, Isabel, who never had children. And Isabel Goldsmith, she took up residence in Mexico. The Goldsmith family has a lot of, they're sort of spread. Even though James Goldsmith, it says he was French-British, they're kind of heavily associated with Britain. The family largely has sort of settled there, but they have ties to France. They have ties to Mexico. There's a big, I think, resort that Isabel Goldsmith, the daughter, runs. As you can see, she was married briefly to a Frenchman, and she has no children, and she has given interviews saying that she didn't want to have children because of the tragic circumstances of her own birth, that she was born, her mother had died, and her father, unfortunately, did not want to really be involved in her upbringing because he found his daughter to be a painful reminder of his late wife, which while understandable, is incredibly tragic and terrible for poor Isabel. And I am pulling up a picture of, this is Isabel the daughter. You can see here. And art enthusiast Isabel Goldsmith's impressive collection is up for auction. Oh, I wonder when that was. I hadn't heard about that. 2022. The lots include important works by Raphaelite and symbolist artists from Burne-Jones to Fernand Knopf. Indeed. So there's the lovely Isabel Goldsmith. And here's some of the art she was selling. Okay. Oh, there she is. Oh, okay, lovely. This is her wedding photo. Isabel Goldsmith here on the right, and her ex-husband, Baron Arnaud de Ronay, from 1973. Oh, don't play a video. I don't need to be dinged for copyright, please. Thank you, Tatler. Okay, so that's Isabel Goldsmith, the first daughter of Sir Jimmy and the elder half-sister of Zac. Now, as we mentioned, Jimmy moved on from his first wife and had a girlfriend or mistress, if you will. I guess it's not really your mistress if you're not married at the time, although James Goldsmith's famous line about mistresses and wives, which I've heard he didn't actually say it was merely attributed to him, but nonetheless it's sort of famously attached to him, is that when you marry your mistress, you create a vacancy. And he certainly, if he didn't say that, if he did not coin that phrase, he certainly lived up to it. Oh, movie of the week in the chat. Why the Long Face? Oh, well, I explained why the Long Face. Movie of the week. Her mother died tragically while pregnant, and her father virtually abandoned her to be raised by relatives, I believe. Yes, Alton Everything, your new AI music project. Yes, you're welcome to take my idea, but you have to give me 50%. I don't even want credit. I just want profits. So 50% profits, movie of the week, and you can take all the credit. I'm happy to be a silent, invisible, but well compensated partner. Okay, that's my this counts as a deal. This verbal contract. This verbal contract is legal and binding, and I will take you to court in my empire if you go back on the terms of this. You got it? All right. So here is Ginette. This was, speaking of long faces, so this was James Goldsmith's second baby mama, if you will. Some people find that term offensive, but this was the second mother of his children. Done. Okay, we have a deal. And so the two children that James Goldsmith had with Ginette Léry, I will bring that up in 1 second. Oh, my internet is being slow on me, and I'm trying to look something up quickly, and it's not working with me. Come on, little internet, let's go. Cool. All right. So the children of Ginette and Jimmy Goldsmith are Man. Great name, right? Can I find an actual photo? This, okay, a very old 1980 photo that is supposed to be Man, Goldsmith, and mother. So that should be Ginette, but it's very hard to see. And then, of course, there is this photo. Oh, look at this great headline. The runaway lovers remain in hiding. Oh, and that's Isabel Patino. There's James Goldsmith. I think that's Teddy, his brother, who looks remarkably like young Ben. Jimmy's second, or not second son, his second son with Lady Annabelle, but not his Zac's younger brother. It's really terrible. I tend to think of the kids that Jimmy Goldsmith had with Lady Annabelle, meaning Zac and his brother Ben and their sister Jemima, as the kids, like the first, second, third, even though they're absolutely not, because they sort of, oh, whoops, wrong photo. They had like basically the bigger publicity. The other kids that he had out from his other marriage, his other relationships, I always think of them as like the not core family. I don't know. Hopefully they didn't feel that way, but I couldn't blame them if they did. So that's the one son that he had with Jeanette. And then they have a daughter, Alice. If you want to pronounce it French, it would be Alice. If you want to pronounce it English American, it would be Alex. And there she is with the gigantic hat. Wow, that's a hat. Look out. If a strong wind comes up, she's gone. She's toast. It kind of looks like a big potato chip or one of the round dipper tortilla chips. But anyway, this is her wedding in France to Goffredo Marcaccini. And, excuse me, oh, there goes my throat. So, looking lovely at their wedding in 1991. And here's another battle over an ecological biosphere. Oh, and there they are with their daughter, Sienna, in a much-studied reserve. This being a New York Times page, it may not actually let me look at the article. So I'm going to bounce away from this. So again, those are the son and daughter. So that's the second daughter and the first son, the first three children of Sir Jimmy Goldsmith. This actually looks like it would be an interesting... Yeah, there you go. See, it's paywalled. Thanks, New York Times. There are ways around that, but I don't have a way to deal with that right now. So maybe that's something to come back to for another time. So going back to James, oh, this is the Patino, sorry. Going back to the Goldsmiths and James. So after Jeanette, it mentions in 1978, pardon me, he married his mistress, Lady Annabelle Burleigh, by whom he already had two children, Jemima and Zacharias. Now, this is a very odd, weird story, the story of how they came together and why, and how they conducted their relationship. And I will try to make this as quick as possible, the TLDR, but it's kind of a confusing, long TLDR. I will pull up a picture of Lady Annabelle. She is quite an interesting and formidable woman. She has written a book of memoirs, which wasn't, considering her life, it really didn't have a lot of dirt and juice in it. I kind of expected more, but it was pretty tame. But nonetheless, an interesting look at the woman and her life. And the mind behind a woman who would tolerate the relationship that she did with Jimmy Goldsmith. And you'll understand what I mean by that in a moment. So this is Lady Annabelle, a rather old photo, but very representative of her. She pretty much looks like this, just older and well, heavier, not in a mean way. I don't mean that in a mean way. Just, it happens. She got older. And as you can see here, this is the wedding of Lady Annabelle Vane Tempest Stewart, a triple-barreled surname. You may be used to double-barreled surnames. She was blessed with a triple-barreled surname, and the title Lady, the courtesy title of Lady, because her father, this guy, there's a little... Well, there he was when he was just a wee little mite carrying a crown for the coronation of King George V in 1911. So as you can see, a very well-connected family that her father as a child was performing at the coronation of the great-grandfather of the current king. Yes, George V was the grandfather. Yeah, no, great-grandfather? Yeah, that's right. George V, George VI, Elizabeth II, and now Charles III. Okay. It's been a while. So anyway, her father was a marquess, and Lady Annabelle first married this guy, Mark Burleigh, who is now deceased, but he was very well known, and as you can see, very well educated, Eton, Oxford. His father, Sir Oswald Burleigh, as you can see, English portrait painter and royal portraitist. Again, very well connected, very fancy people. Sir Oswald Burleigh's two children, one being Mark, who later became well known for owning clubs, restaurants, that sort of thing, for the very, very fashionable set. Annabelle's being maybe the most famous, I guess. I feel like it's the most famous because it was named after Lady Annabelle. And as you can read on the Wikipedia page, a member-only nightclub that catered to an exclusive clientele, including the Prince of Wales. And when they say the Prince of Wales, they mean the current King Charles III. Mark's Club, Harry's Bar, you know, he was very well known for just being that guy, the guy who, pardon me, opened clubs that the hoity-toity toffs of Britain and you know, others, but a lot of, you know, the British upper class set, royals and royal adjacent people would go and play. And his sister, Maxime, is also kind of well known because she married a de la Falaise, and which is French aristocracy, as you can kind of see. She was very fashionable. As you can see, it says fashion model, Warhol, and if you can read on the Wikipedia page, Maxime Burleigh de la Falaise's two children, one, Lulu, her first husband was Desmond Fitzgerald, Knight of Glyn, an Irish, well, it says Anglo-Irish, but the title, I believe, is Irish. And I know I'm going a little bit far afield, but this guy's daughter, Catherine, is married to Dominic West, you know, the actor. The guy from The Wire, the guy from, The Crown, right, that's right. He played, well, Prince Charles as Prince of Wales, but who is now the king. He played Prince Charles in The Crown, and he was like the bad guy or one of the bad guys in the 300. You know who I'm talking about, movie of the week. Dominic West. So there you go, a little entertainment industry flair for the family. And go back. Okay, and Maxime's son, Alexis, he, as it says, he appeared in a Warhol movie, and, pardon me, his son, Daniel, they say he's a chef, food writer, and photographer. Daniel was associated in, I want to say the 90s, was it, with Madonna? There you go. It typed ahead. Was he in her? Oh, thank goodness that Safe Search is on, because I don't want to click on any of these photos lest I bring up something inappropriate. But Danielle, who is this guy with the bone the great model face there. Okay, I think I can click on this and it's safe. That's Danielle. That's his sister Lucy. And well, as you can see, I think this was Madonna's book, you know, the S book that started with the letter S. Yes, Yes, movie of the week. Dominic West played McNulty. That's what I said. The Wire. He was McNulty on The Wire, and yes, he was the guy who gets attacked by the. Yes, yes, you got the right guy. Yeah. So yes, the back to the De La Falaises. Yeah, Danielle used to run around with Madonna for a little bit, and that's how I best remember him. I think this is more. This is he more in later years. Here you go, wearing looks like a chef's outfit. So that's Danielle. And Lucie, who was on the left in that photo, his sister, is married to Keith Richards' son. You know, Keith Richards of the Rolling Stones? Well, Lucie, the sister, is married to Marlon. Here they are. That's Marlon. You can see the bone structure. He looks a lot like Keith. And Lucie, who I think was pregnant when this photo was taken. This must be an old photo. And so Marlon is the son of Keith Richards and Anita Pallenberg. If movie of the week, I know you know who Anita is. She was the witchy one. She was Keith's witchy girlfriend that he stole, quote unquote, from Brian Jones, the other Rolling Stone that Anita had dated. They have a long and wacky relationship and story, and that's, wow, really another story for another time. But I do think it's kind of interesting, all these like just connections. But anyway, we will move away from De La Falaise and go back to Mark Burleigh, the club owner, who was the first husband of Lady Annabelle. And Lady Annabelle, as I said, was married to Mark Burleigh, and they had 3 children together. Rupert was their first son, Robin is their second son, and India Jane was their daughter. India Jane is a painter, and Rupert, the son, a very odd story. He died, or he disappeared when he was 31 off the coast of Africa. In her book, Lady Annabelle describes that he apparently got up in the morning, and I guess this was a habit of his to go, I think she describes it as a habitual activity that he would go in the morning and swim. Except this is Africa. This is Togo, West Africa, and they do have sharks off the coast. And supposedly his clothing was left, neatly piled, I think, on the shore, and he disappeared. And it was believed that he went swimming and perhaps gotten by sharks, or, was no longer able to swim, perhaps took water into his lungs, maybe he got a cramp, but that he unfortunately, they believe, died due to something terrible happening while he was in the water. No one knows. Or if they do, they're not telling. So that was Rupert. And here, I'll pull up. Let me see if I could. I always find it easier to associate people if I can see like a picture, see who they are. That's Lady Annabelle. That's Mark Burleigh. Here, let me open it up. You can see it better. And I guess that's baby Rupert because the picture came up. Yeah, Rupert. Baby Rupert. Let's see. Oh, okay. Well, we'll click off of that. And here they go. Here, that's good. Okay, that's Rupert. That's Robin. And that, named after, obviously, his maternal grandfather. And that is India Jane of the striking profile. Oh, make that go away. There we go. She's a painter. You can see the paint brushes here in the photo. There's Rupert and Robin, who has sort of an interesting story himself. But I should, yeah, okay. So let me pull up not Rupert, Robert, Robin, sorry, Robin's page. Now, Robin's kind of interesting because he had an unfortunate encounter at a zoo, and he was mauled by a lion when he was young. And you might think, why would a child be around a lion? That seems dangerous. Here's this is Robin Burley. And, you just might think like, oh, whatever. He's just a, dude. But yes, he did get mauled by a lion as a child. It sounds like I'm making that up, but I'm not. The family were friends with a man called Interesting Triptych. Yes. India Jane she has a fascinating, she has an amazing profile. Her brother Rupert also had rather an amazing profile. They both have a very samey look. Here's, that's India Jane. That's Robin. That's Lady Annabelle, their mother, and that's Mark, their father. I think they got into oh, look, dog. I'm such a child. I love pictures with dogs in them because I love dogs so much. I feel like India Jane and Robin got into a fight over their father's clubs after his death. Oh, look at that. I don't even, I know that's cake, but I don't, considering what people in parties like that would do. I don't want to say what that looks like that could be, but Scarface comes to mind. I don't know if you can see this photograph of a birthday party of the Burley boys, or I guess that's, sorry, Robin Burley. I don't know what the date on this is at this birthday party. But anyway, I'm being silly and entertaining myself here. But yes, it is an interesting triptych movie of the week. I do think they had a legal battle, but I'd have to look that up again. But anyway, so Robin was... does it say? Does it explain? Oh, yeah, he's another environmentalist. And I'm looking for oh, here it is, yes. Oh, it was a tiger. I take it back. He wasn't mauled by a lion. It was a tiger in John Aspinall's private zoo. The bones on one side of his face were crushed. He has endured years of cosmetic surgery, but the accident left him with permanent scarring. Yeah, and it's horrifying. Aspinall was an interesting guy. He was a gamba addict. He was a gambler, and he ran a high class, if you will, if that's not a high class gambling establishment, if that's not a contradiction in terms. And he was also well known for having a private zoo, and his family still has this zoo. His son, they have a tradition where like his son has they have the babies and then they give them to the gorillas to hold, to welcome them as a member of their like clan. I'm not making this up. I swear I am not making this up. This is John Aspinall. Again, he's a very fascinating man, but one of those people that you could admire for their drive, their imagination, their will to power, if you will, but you could also despise them for their tunnel vision, their self-centeredness, their lack of compassion, perhaps. Let's see. Monaco and Macau count as high class, says movie of the week. No, not to me, but, I don't think gambling at all is high class. It's gambling, but, I guess you can pretend that if you put on a tuxedo and say it's Casino Royale, that it's somehow classier than if you were, I don't know, shooting dice in a back alley or pulling slots in a casino. I guess it's all one's perspective. But John Aspinall, this guy, made a ton of money with gambling and started his private zoo. And this is going to come back in a moment. The idea of a zoo breeding programs, genetics, and that sort of thing. Movie of the week says tend to go hand in hand, huh? Self-centeredness and will to power. Well, it's kind of hard to press one's own agenda if one takes other people's feelings, desires, agendas into consideration. If you really want to get something done, you kind of have to be single-minded and a bit of a jerk about it. I mean, convincing other people to help you achieve your ends helps. But, you know, again, if you have an idea and you want to do it and someone comes along and goes, that's a bad idea, or, maybe you shouldn't do that. And you go, you're right. Okay. Well, you're not going to get anywhere. But if you just go, no, my way, we're doing it this way. I'm right. And everyone's going to, well, anyone who's going to stay around you is going to be someone who's going to go along with you. They're at least going to be passive and allow you to do what you want, or they might actively support you in accomplishing your goals, in which case, if you can convince a bunch of people to help you achieve your goals, that kind of tends to feed the idea that you're right and you should do what you want, even if that doesn't mean that you're right. But as I said, it would tend to give that feedback loop of, yeah, go ahead, do it. And, you know, genetics and breeding. Yes, exactly. Movie of the week. It's a little, you know, maybe what's good for your gorilla program shouldn't be extended into the human world. But since we're in this area already, this is the guy who basically match made between Jimmy Goldsmith and Lady Annabelle. Lady Annabelle, if I'm remembering the story correctly, and I don't want to go hunt to find it, he said to Lady Annabelle, you and Jimmy should breed. You would have good children together, and you should do that. So do that. And they did. They did. Lady Annabelle left Mark Burleigh and bred with Sir Jimmy Goldsmith. She bred children with him. And I'm not, well, I keep going back to that photo. Sorry. Wrong photo. I'm trying to find the correct photo. There you go. This is Lady Annabelle. That's her daughter, India Jane Burleigh. And these are the children she bred with Sir Jimmy. That's Jemima, that's Zac, and that's baby Ben, who is the only one of the children that was born within the confines of an actual marriage. Movie of the week says that is so weird and tacky. Well, it's definitely strange. It is definitely strange. And when you consider that Lady Annabelle already had, well, 3 children. I mean, yes, Rupert would die, but he was not deceased at this point when she first hooked up with Sir Jimmy. And Jimmy also had 3 children of his own, 2 daughters and a son. I think that was also part of the impetus, was to give Jimmy a son. Why Aspinall would be concerned with this, I don't even know. Movie of the week says, OMG, the girl in the front has zombie face. I think it's maybe not the greatest photo. She has thick bangs and they're kind of, shadowing her face a bit. Or maybe she looks like a member of a 70s metal band. Which, do you mean the kid? You mean the little girl? You mean Jemima in the front? Brit metal band. Well, I mean, what do you want me to say? I don't know. I'm not criticizing a child's looks. They're little kids and they had no control over their haircuts, I'm assuming. But anyway, they're generally considered to be a rather attractive family, from my understanding. But anyway, yes, the Aspinall breeding program extended to Lady Annabelle and Sir Jimmy Goldsmith. Very odd. Again, why one is concerned about your friend's DNA and their offspring. I really don't know, but they're an interesting group of people. Movie of the week, you may recall this, that Aspinall was one of the Lord Lucan crowd. Lord Lucan, the British Earl who disappeared mysteriously after being accused of, I'll use that awful YouTube term, unaliving his children's nanny. And his wealthy and powerful and well-connected friends were suspected of helping Lord Lucan flee the country and escape and essentially get away with, the worst crime. But no one, well, again, no one really knows for sure. If they do, they're not talking. And so this is the kind of... They were a bit of a loose, crowd, a little bit of a little swingy, I would say, a little loose party people, but not the kind of party people, how to say this? Mark Burleigh owned clubs where people like this could go and get sloppy. And the only people there are their own kind. It's not like when a hot, a movie star or a hot music act or a sports personality, they go to, the clubs, the hot clubs, LA, New York, London, Paris, wherever. It's more public, even though there are the VIP rooms, there are the private lounges, there are the private spaces. These are the special private spaces for, much like Aspinall's gambling clubs, for people with the means, the money, and the connections to do their, they're doing their quote-unquote high-class freak-offs in these, they would be even posher than, say, a Diddy White party. This would be like, oh, we do this here with only titled people and whatnot. It's that sort of thing. Lady Annabelle, speaking of Lord Lucan, Lady Annabelle at one point was, here, let me show you the sort of famous photo. And she talks about this. She writes about this in her memoir. Lady Annabelle does. That's a picture. That's Lady Annabelle. And that's Lord Lucan. And I don't know why this is... They constantly run these articles about Lord Lucan, he's in South Africa. Lord Lucan's been found in Australia, he's a surfer. Lord Lucan's been found hiding in, Africa or Southeast Asia or someplace. And these photos, this was not after Lucan disappeared. This would have been taken before. I'm going to bother to click... Yeah, but they put these articles up every couple years. There's Lord Lucan is alive and living somewhere. And then it turns out, no, it's not. It's just some random guy. And that's what this article is about. But this was Lord Lucan, who disappeared was it in 74? Yeah, 1974. And that was his estranged wife, who he allegedly was trying to attack when he allegedly actually attacked the nanny, that being the nanny, who did not survive. And that guy, we don't care. Okay, blah, blah, blah. I'm looking for the Lady Annabelle photo, if they actually included it. Oh, look at these. They've got pictures from Clue or Cluedo. Here we go. There's Lady Annabelle Burleigh, Zac Goldsmith's mother, with Lord Lucan in an undated photo. The fate of the fugitive peer has captivated the imagination of the British public for decades. If I remember correctly, Lady Annabelle said something about that this photo was run and in the press, and it suggested that maybe she had been having an affair with Lord Lucan or something like that. So this was the kind of this is a very gambling and drinking and sleeping around kind of set. Exactly the kind of thing we expect from our, high-class toffs, our aristocratic British people. I expect this. We deserve it. And they deliver. And that's why I'm doing the stream, because this is just juicy and great gossip and fun to talk about. So Lady Annabelle, and yeah, I did get a bit ahead of myself, but spoiler alert, she left. I will back up here. That's Aspinall. And we could do a whole show on Aspinall. He's a fascinating guy. I could probably do more than one show on him. But yeah, so okay, that's Robin and Mark. And I'll get back to Robin. Robin, okay, no, I'll do Robin now because this is good. So okay, he was mauled by the tiger at John Aspinall Zoo, and he did, as you can see, he took over the running of his father's clubs because his father's health declined. He was getting older, and then his dad fired him, and yeah, see, there was a falling out with his sister, blah, blah, blah. Now, scandals and weird things with Robin Burley. So, you can see here, Burley has a daughter, Maud, by a former girlfriend. Now, what it doesn't say is that he was a real jerk and a half about this kid. And as I recall, he really didn't want to like deal. Ooh, this is great. This explains it all. If Vanity Fair will allow me to read this article. Yes, cool, not paywalled. All right, this is an article from Vanity Fair. Vanity Fair usually does a great job. There's Mark Burley, and this will explain what went down, and it should do a good job of explaining Robin and how he had a problem with dealing with his kid. Not that the child didn't do anything wrong, and who he ended up marrying, because he ended up marrying a socialite, a wealthy woman who married a very famous British pop star, had a bunch of kids with him, divorced him, married this guy, was caught up in a big, big international scandal, and then died. Kind of, maybe suspiciously, definitely at an early age, and under kind of unusual circumstances. But I need a refill on my tea, so I'm going to take a quick break. I'm going to refresh my cup of tea, and then when we come back, we're going to delve into this Vanity Fair article and explain more about the Burleys and the Goldsmiths and the potentially latest addition to the Goldsmith family. And we'll get back into that in just a few minutes. Hello, 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 and we are back. This is French Dip Empire, and we are talking today about Zac Goldsmith, his upcoming apparent marriage to a Fleming, Ian Fleming's great niece, Hum Fleming, a model, and a spy nepo baby, if you will. And where we left off was talking about Zac's mother's family, or hey, movie of the week, I see you there. We were about to dive into this Vanity Fair article about, here, I will show you. There you go. Here's Vanity Fair. That's Mark Burleigh, the first husband of Lady Annabelle Goldsmith, Zac's mom. And as I was telling you all before the break, Lady Annabelle was married to Mark Burleigh first and had 3 children with him. And then her friend, John Aspinall, the gambler slash private zoo owner whose tiger mauled her son's face, convinced her, as if that bad judgment weren't enough amongst these people, to have an affair with another man, Jimmy Goldsmith, and bear him children as a high-class breeding project, as far as I can tell. And they all decided this was a really grand idea. I don't think Mark Burleigh thought it was such a grand idea, because he lost his wife out of it and the mother of his children. But they did remain friends, and, it was Lady Annabelle's decision that she believed that that basically everybody should remain friends. And even as Jimmy continued to go forth and procreate with at least one other woman, she welcomed all of the children of her husband, her second husband, not this guy, that's Mark Burleigh, the second husband, Sir Jimmy Goldsmith, and she basically treated them all like one big happy family, which is a level of acceptance and generosity that most people don't have. But then again, she chose to have children with a man because their friend thought they'd have good offspring together. So it's really a mentality I can't understand, and therefore I can't explain. But we were talking about the Burleighs because they're pretty interesting. Mark Burleigh, as I mentioned, opened these clubs, private clubs, where the upper classes, especially of Britain, London high society, royals and nobles and whatnot, would go and, drink their drinks and do their, their late night shenanigans out of the movie of the week says high class polycule. Again, is that a contradiction in terms? Possibly. But yes, when you look at the high class, especially amongst aristocracy and nobility, royalty, it's all kind of one big polycule. They're all kind of kissing cousins, Eskimo cousins, and every other kind of cousin. That sometimes multiple relationships on top of relationships, if you will. So Mark Burleigh was, the guy who created and ran the clubs that those people like to hang out and have fun in. And his children, India Jane and Robin being a son, were involved with the running of the clubs. Burleigh, he is now dead, Mark, but the children live on, and some of the clubs still live on. So I thought it would be fun to take a look at this article from 2008 by Maureen Orth called Hurly Burly. Oh, get it? Clever. And pardon me for having a sip of some extremely hot Assam tea. A little too hot to be drinking right now. But anyway, here we go. Beginning the article. Supreme arbiter of aristocratic London nightlife, Mark Burleigh poured all his charm, generosity, and taste into his portfolio of clubs, including the fabled Annabelles, until he abruptly sold them right before his death last August. But as a battle over his $200 million estate reveals, he left his own family tragically damaged. The author asks Burleigh's feuding children, Robin and India Jane, and his ex-wife, Lady Annabel Goldsmith, why he was so good at business and so bad at home. Many such cases. Mark Burleigh, in his living room at Turlough Lodge, I'd say Turlough, in 2001. Okay, so that's the photograph up there. Lovely. Tasteful. Okay. In his obituaries last August, so that would be 2007, it appeared that Mark Burleigh, the London club owner who died at the age of 77, might go down in history as the man who first wrapped muslin around lemon halves to prevent them from squirting randomly. Ah, yes, we all know how lemon halves are apt to just go off wantonly, squirting all over the place. Oh no, those randomly squirting lemon halves. Whatever could we do? And here comes Mark. I've got the answer. Muslin. Thank you. Randomly squirting lemons. That must be quite a party. Anyway. Or spilling seeds on his patron's perfectly prepared turbo, or turbot, as I've heard the Brits say. Spilling seeds on your... Well, okay, that I understand. That you wouldn't want to squeeze a lemon half and have lemon seeds falling out all over your fish. However, can you really not pay the chefs to prepare the lemon halves and remove the seeds before serving them? Do you really have to put muslin over them? Could you not, I don't know, commission a silver lemon squeezer perhaps that will squeeze your lemon half and retain the seeds so that they don't go shooting out all over the place? Movie of the Week says, they're a scourge, and don't get me started with cherry tomatoes. You don't like seeds in your cherry tomatoes? You tend to just eat those. Movie of the Week. Seedless lemons are a thing. I wondered about that too. I bet they don't taste as good. But I would imagine. Well, did Mark Burleigh invent them? Did he recommend that they create them? I need a silver lemon squeezer. I think everyone needs a silver lemon squeezer. I think we should all be having silver lemon squeezers. We all get one. A chicken in every pot and a silver lemon squeezer in every kitchen drawer. No cherry tomatoes squirty randomly. Right. Well, you should chew with your mouth closed, Movie of the Week, and then they won't squirt quite so randomly. But this is enough discussion of squirting. I feel like we're going to get demonetized or something. Let's move on. That horrified his aristocratic friends, for to them Mark had always been so much more a towering, sardonic, pampered monument to English style, who managed to exemplify the cultivated manners of the playing fields of Eton while introducing edible food in beautiful surroundings and replacing stuffiness with sexiness in Mayfair nightlife. In 1963, when he opened Annabel's, the first of his string of exclusive, members-only clubs and restaurants, which would eventually include Mark's Club, Harry's Bar, the Bath Rackets, and George, swinging London had not yet exploded onto the scene, and when it did, it was largely a working-class phenomenon. Oh, how snobby! This is also snobby. I love it. Burleigh made the Beatles the first and only exceptions to the strict dress code at Annabel's, where men were required to wear jacket and tie. If Frank Sinatra or Ari Onassis happened to be in the house, Burleigh would make sure he was well taken care of, but would never drop by his table to chat. That would be the head waiter's job. David Metcalf, the Duke of Windsor's godson and a founding member of the club, informed me. I like that. So Frank Sinatra and Aristotle Onassis were both classed in the same, well, you can come in, but I'm not going to talk to you. I'm not going to be seen at your table. Oh, ouch. It's kind of rude. Is that the equivalent of being seated in Siberia? How insulting. You know that old Groucho Marx line about what was it? I'd never want to be a member of a club that would have me, or something like that. I don't think I'd want to be at a club where they're like, well, you could come in, but we don't really want you here and we're not going to talk to you. What's the point? That's crazy. And also, that's just rude. If you're going to let people into your club, at least have the decency to welcome them. If you're not going to give them the full welcome, that's rude. Stop it. Don't do that. Don't let them in. Be honest. Okay. Annabelle's had no cabaret, but occasionally performers such as Ray Charles and the Supremes would play one-night stands. When a promoter for Ike and Tina Turner demanded a table for a sold-out performance of theirs at Annabelle's, he was denied. After he stormed out and threatened to cancel the performance, a compromise was reached whereby he would be greeted profusely upon entering and taken to a seat at the bar. Ugh, that's gross. In the process, however, he overheard Burley say, I don't care if he comes down the effing chimney. Except he didn't say effing, he said the actual word. So, Ike and Tina Turner did not appear that night. Well, good for them. What snobs. Well, not Ike and Tina. I mean Mark Burley. Okay. They could come down the chimney. I wonder if they had an actual chimney. I would have been tempted to come down it. Maybe not the way they'd think, but, you know. Anyway, Burley... Oh, wait, movie of the week. That is so weird. I mean, you know, well, snobbery is as snobbery does. Burley became a familiar... You can't be a snob and be a nice person. That's sort of part and parcel of having your nose up in the air, right? Burley became a familiar sight around Berkeley Square, seated in his chauffeur-driven Mercedes, puffing a Cohiba with Blitz, his Rhodesian Ridgeback, nice dog, seated up front. For many in London... And he named his dog Blitz? Like the Blitz? The London Blitz? It's kind of a sick joke, no? Okay. For many in London's disappearing tribe of old boy toffs, he represented the quintessential English gentleman, exquisitely turned out, providing impeccable quality and service through a deeply loyal and perfectly trained staff. His eagle eye missed nothing, be it the careless fold of a napkin or the slightly crooked angle at which a painting was hung. Well, you know, today I think they have medication for that. But I will admire his attention to detail. Movie of the week says, I guess it's just, quote, lightning, unquote, but still? I don't know what you're referring to. I'm sorry. Lightning? Oh, Blitz? No, I meant like, whatever. Naming your dog after a tragedy where people died seems a little odd, but, you know, whatever. Maybe it's just me. Okay, his eagle eye missed nothing, be it... Oh, I said that already. He was the upper class social set's final arbiter of taste, and cost was never a concern. At Mark's Club, for example, each silver pepper mill was valued at $800, each mustard pot $1,000, each blue-striped Murano glass $100. At Harry's bar, the flowers cost $120,000 a year. But no silver lemon squeezer? Get it together. Gosh. I mean, Mark Burley, hello. Get the Empress to run your club. I'll take care of it. If money is no object, I mean, everybody should have had a silver lemon squeezer. Just saying. Okay, Burley wandered the world, especially Italy, seeking the best new cocktails and recipes. meeting with world-class chefs, and poaching exceptional waiters. Well, of course, they mean poaching like stealing them, not actually poaching them like wildlife. That would be something. Sorry, sip of my Assam. My new Stanley mug is keeping my tea a little too piping hot. Have to switch over to my water. Okay. Over the years, and all during his marriage, he seduced numerous women. But his real loves were his clubs and his dogs. Ah, what an Englishman. People could never tell what he was thinking as they bowed, scraped, and competed for his favor because his stiff upper lip never so much as quivered, even when he endured unimaginable family tragedies. Movie of the week, Poached Waiters, yes. Oh, the viands at Annabelle's are sus. Oh no, yes, poached waiters. Yes, instead of hiring the best waiters, Mark Burleigh would merely travel the world, poaching waiters and recycling them for his club meat. And that way no other club or restaurant could ever have a good waiter. You'd think that would get around and waiters would be like spilling plates of pasta into laps purposefully just so as not to be the best waiter and therefore not to be poached by Mark Burleigh. But anyway, I think we're writing a bad movie. Or I am. Okay, his love, his clubs and his dogs. Okay, unimaginable family tragedies, which we touched upon earlier. In 1970, on a visit to the private zoo of John Aspinall, owner of the Claremont Club, the casino above Annabelle's, Burleigh's 12-year-old son, Robin, entered a pregnant tigress's enclosure with his mother and brother and Aspinall and his family. The animal grabbed Robin's head in her mouth, and the boy's face was left permanently disfigured. And I imagine everyone else was permanently traumatized. I imagine everyone developed PTSD. Well, maybe not Aspinall. He seems not to have cared about much. He seems rather unflappable. Okay, in 1986, Burleigh's handsome firstborn, Rupert. Oh, okay, that's disgusting. Don't say handsome firstborn, because it's kind of like a slap at poor Robin, who got his face mauled by a tigress. And a pregnant tigress, what were they thinking? You don't bother a pregnant animal. I mean, goodness. From what I understand, pregnant human women can be a bit dangerous at times, hormones and whatnot. And plus, they have to protect their child. That, protective mother thing must really kick in. But yeah, saying handsome firstborn, I mean, hey, rude. Okay. Handsome firstborn Rupert, 30, ventured out into dangerous waters off the coast of Togo in West Africa and was never seen again. Though Rupert was his father's favorite. Oh, it's always nice to know that you're not mommy or daddy's favorite, isn't it? Oh, that's just so terrible. I know parents supposedly all have favorites, but oh God, no one should ever know that. That's just the worst thing. Any discussion of his demise was strictly forbidden. Well, that's healthy. I'm sure they all dealt with it extremely well. Similarly, Mark never uttered a word about his well-born wife, Lady Annabel Vane Tempest Stewart, for whom his Tony Club was named, having 2 children with James Jimmy Goldsmith, the late billionaire, before she and Mark were divorced. That means briefly for a time, her 2 children by Jimmy Goldsmith were legally Mark Burleigh's children. Legally. I'm that's so bizarre. I mean, I guess not technically, because I guess she would have put the correct name on the birth certificates, but like a child born within a marriage is the legal child of the father. I mean the husband of the birth mother. Oh, this is so confusing and weird. Yes, movie of the week. Pregnant tigress is kind of a red flag. Yes. Okay. She later married Goldsmith and had a 3rd child with him, and he would have 2 more children with another mistress during their marriage. Indeed, he would, and we will get to that later. Mark and Annabel remained friends and soulmates until his death, united in their love of dogs as much as in the parenting of Rupert, Robin, and their daughter, India Jane, so named because Mark loved the word India, although being British, he probably pronounced it Inja. Inja. He never commented on anything except dogs or something funny, a painting, food, or wine. India Jane, who is a painter of portraits and dogs, told me of her formidable father. Her word, I guess, formidable. Let's see. Her father loved dogs, and he was a famous host of people. India Jane's subjects in her paintings are dogs and people. Well, I guess she's her father's daughter in that regard. He never showed his deck of cards. She added, we all had our work cut out for us with Pup. He could scowl and smile at the same time. For a child, it's a very, very odd feeling. With an adult, it's bliss because you can figure out the subtlety. But with a child, it's terrifying. He sounds like someone I would not want to be friends with. He sounds like he had some pain and some emotional issues. He actually reminds me of someone that I know, an older British gentleman who seems to only be able to talk about light subjects and really can't handle the emotional thing at all. I wonder what people like that do. I mean, they go through these emotional experiences and then act like it just doesn't even happen. That can't be entirely good. Just as not being able to let go of horrible emotional things must be terrible to never ever have a feeling of them. Movie of the Week says, that sounds wildly abusive. Well, Movie of the Week, I think it's I don't think there's an argument. It's absolutely wildly abusive. It's cruel. It's cruel to do to even an adult. It could be cruel to, quite frankly. It's horribly abusive to do to children, your own children especially. Awful. Excuse me. Continuing the article, Mark really wanted his children to be born at age 21. He liked the children when they were grown. Lady Annabel explained to me at Ormley Lodge, her house in southwest London. Well, honestly, that means he didn't like children at all, even his own. I mean, I'm sorry, but you can't just start liking people when they turn 21. Not to mention that people aren't all fantastic at the age of 21. Oh, okay, you're 21 now. Cool. You were an idiot before. You were completely unworthy of being spoken to at 20 or 19 or 17. But now, no, it doesn't. Life doesn't work that way. There are people who are 85 years old who have been dopey and not worth talking to from the day they were born. And there are people that are little kids now that are probably more interesting to talk to than any one of a number of middle-aged people with accomplishments and educations and whatnot. So there you go. That's crazy. Okay. Oh, good Lord. In fact, she said he didn't really want children at all. Well, amazingly, there are ways of preventing having children, and they're rather easy. Rupert was a mistake. Is something that no one should ever say about a child, ever. Especially their own. Even if it is true. Don't say mistake. Even if you say unplanned, at least, it shows a little bit of sloppiness on the parents' part. But good Lord, never tell your child they are a mistake. Never say that, ever. Besides, it's not they're the mistake. You've made the mistake. It was your mistake. They are not a mistake. Oh, God, it really, no. Oh, this is disgusting. This is really gross and awful and disgusting. Okay. Rupert was a mistake. This is Lady Annabel speaking. I became pregnant totally by mistake. If the tab A went into slot B and deposited a substance C, then yeah, it wasn't totally by mistake. If you did the deed, that's how that goes. So, yeah, no. And these are the power elite, says Movie of the Week. No wonder the world is the way it is. Yes. Well, just remind yourself that this is a woman with the title Lady. Lady. Some lady. Anyway. Rupert was a mistake. I became pregnant totally by mistake. She doubles down on that word. She said, adding, Mark was okay with one, but he never really wanted another. So, do you hear that? Robin, the not favored firstborn with the mangled face. Do you hear that, India Jane? The daughter, the second unwanted child. I mean, really, all of them were unwanted and mistakes. Yeah, so treat her like a dame. Yeah, no. I don't know, Movie of the Week. Can you imagine saying this? Can you imagine publicly admitting this? These people are awful. But it just makes me think how awful the people that raised them must have been, that they raised these awful people. Okay. In her 2004 book, Annabelle, An Unconventional Life. That's the memoir that I was referring to earlier. I have that book. Lady Annabelle writes of how Mark tapped her on the shoulder in the hospital shortly after Robin was born, that's their second child, the second son, and exclaimed, Darling, you must wake up. There must have been a mistake. I think you've been given the wrong baby. This one is simply hideous. Oh no! I'm covering my face with my hands because I'm so intensely ashamed for these people. The shame that God did not apparently give them. Imagine saying that. Imagine repeating that. Imagine publishing that so that your children will know and everyone in the world will know this. I can't even imagine. And keep in mind, he's saying this about a baby, an infant. I mean, infants, they're all mushy. They just came out. Well, they've been smooshed. They've been, compacted. Give them a chance. They've been through a heck of a time. And this was before he got mangled by a tiger. Can you imagine the level of insensitivity Mark Burleigh must have shown poor Robin when his simply hideous, unwanted second son, useless, superfluous child became even more, not physically up to his standards, I imagine. I imagine this might have led to the trauma, the internal trauma that led Robin to be rather a not great parent in the future, which we will get to. Movie of the Week is freaking out in the chat. I know. I mean, look, I have heard of people doing and saying horrible things about and to their children and saying horrible things about their children in front of other people. But I mean, just to immortalize it in your memoir, to say this. And the thing is, this is, you can see these quotes taken out of context and you're thinking maybe there's some awareness of like how awful this is and maybe you deal with it in some way. Not really. Not really. Not really. Okay. Lady Annabelle told me, I can't blame him for not being a brilliant father because he never really asked to have any of them. Okay, number one, he did the thing that would cause the babies to be conceived, correct? Then yeah, he kind of did, in a way, ask for any of them. Y'all understood how the deed worked? Okay, well then, yeah, you did ask to have them. And why did she continue to bring children into the world with this man who was this monster? I don't know. I mean, she married him when she was quite young, and they say she was 17 or 18 or thereabouts. Mistakes are made, teenagers are not necessarily known for making the best life decisions. So probably part of the reason why most people shouldn't attach themselves to someone for life when they're so young and then choose to bring other life into the world, if I may be incredibly judgmental. Okay, she was not quite 20. Lady Annabelle was 19 when she married Mark Burleigh. And he was, 4 years older. Okay, so, young, but not a teenager. Right. Just insane. Okay. I can't blame him for not being a brilliant father. He wasn't not a brilliant father. He was definitely a lousy father. And I would even struggle to use the term father at all. I mean, this is one of those sperm donor and I guess money donor kind of thing. He gave them money. He gave them the name. He gave them the genetics. But good Lord. Okay, back to the article, given the eccentric family dynamics, it is perhaps less than surprising that a huge fight is now simmering between India Jane, 47, and Robin, 50. And let's keep in mind this article is from 2008, so everyone's older now. Mark Burleigh is dead, and this is all settled by now. Okay, fight is simmering over their father's will in which he left more than $240 million before taxes. And in Britain, I'm assuming that at least half of that goes to inheritance taxes or something like that. Something about 50%, I would assume, or perhaps even more. Still, neither of them would be in the poorhouse. Robin is challenging the will, which gives the bulk of the estate to India Jane's 2.5-year-old son, Eben, whom she had by a lover, a Canadian named Robert MacDonald, a voice coach and teacher of breathing techniques who was studying to become a psychiatrist. She was married at the time to her second husband, Francis Pike, a banker turned writer and real estate developer who currently lives in Berlin. India Jane is now divorced from Pike and no longer with MacDonald. Okay. In the will, Robin was left 2 tax-free bequests for £1 million, about $2,039,400, and £5 million, $10,197,000. Robin's 4-year-old illegitimate daughter, Maud, who lives in charity housing with her mother, and who never met her paternal grandfather, was left nothing. Shame. Mark Burleigh apparently anticipated that his will might be challenged. Vanity Fair has learned that he wrote a letter to India Jane to be disclosed with the will, in which he explained why he had done the unthinkable. Last June, shortly before he died, Burleigh, without notice and against the wishes of his family, close friends, and staff, abruptly sold his clubs for $207 million, a far higher price than anyone could have predicted. Even though his esteemed friend and advisor, Sir Evelyn de Rothschild, was willing to see if the offer could be matched, Burleigh went ahead and sold to one of those outsiders who are becoming so prominent in the acquisition of London's high-end properties, the self-made millionaire Richard Caring, son of an American GI and a British nurse, whose fortune came from the garment trade in Hong Kong, and who has bought a number of the most fashionable restaurants in London, including the Ivy, Le Caprice, Jay Shiki, and Daphne's. Geez, I'm actually surprised they weren't going to throw this at the feet of either the Russians or the Middle Easterns, because that's what I always hear when people complain about London being taken over by foreigners. They're always complaining about either Russians or some kind of, Saudi Arabian Peninsula wealthy individuals. That they're buying up all the fancy homes in London, and driving, Lambos and Maseratis and whatever all over the streets. I guess it's a bit of a flashier wealth than what the Brits, even the rich Brits, are used to. But proceeding on with the article, Mark said in the letter that he had sold the clubs to protect them from Robin. If Robin would have control of the clubs ultimately would not be worth anything. And Robin certainly would not be looking out for his sister. Ooh. Miranda Brooks, yes, a close friend of India Jane's, explained to me. There had been a previous will by which Robin and India Jane would each have received 50% of the estate. However, in that will, Mark also left his valuable London house and property to India Jane. Peter Munster, one of Mark and his family's closest friends and the executor of that will, says, Robin was less than satisfied with anything other than a completely equal distribution. Regarding the current situation, Munster adds, Mark had reservations about Robin's judgment in relation to his future expansion plans for the clubs and the risk that might have entailed, but he never would have brought Robin in if he hadn't trusted him. The message is, there was no hate in the family. There was no vendetta. Well, if there wasn't before, it seems like he created one. The Dodgy Detectives, the Dodgy Detectives, I think this is a formatting error. Okay, I think that's a paragraph break and title. Mark lost faith in his son after Robin used more than $400,000 from Annabel's accounts to pay former London policemen claiming to be private detectives to supply him with what turned out to be totally false information about Robert MacDonald in an investigation that Robin had instigated. Uh-oh. Sounds like Robin got fleeced. In 2003, following a series of health setbacks, a knee operation, 2 serious falls, and a broken hip that made it impossible for him to walk, Mark had brought Robin and India Jane into the business for the first time. My sister and I got on very well and worked well together, Robin told me in an exchange of emails. Basically, I ran the company, and she attended to the look of the clubs. By all accounts, Robin did an excellent job of bringing in a younger, more with it crowd to Annabel's, which in the 90s was being described as a place where the middle-aged meet the Middle East. Robin had previously been running Burley Sandwiches, a chain he founded, which had shops in London and San Francisco. According to friends of Robin's, Mark forced him to sell the 2 in San Francisco in order to concentrate on Annabel's. There are currently 8 in London. Oh, okay, so there are 8 sandwich shops in London. Well, that's odd. Well, he didn't require him to sell the whole thing, and it seems like it was successful. Well, I don't know. Maybe, obviously, Mark Burley was a massive control freak, and clearly was trying to control his empire from beyond the grave, but it's pretty lousy to say, hey son, I trust you, sell off your success to focus on my thing, and then to just be like, oh, well, now that I'm dead, guess what? Bite me. I don't know. That's not nice. Okay. Back to the article. I lost my place. Let's see. Okay, then in 2004, quite unexpectedly, India Jane, who was 43 and childless, became pregnant by MacDonald. Shortly after the birth of her son, who was a potential heir, Robin, suspicious of MacDonald and the situation, secretly gave the go-ahead to the former cops to find out whether India Jane's boyfriend was out for her money. At that time, India Jane did not have much income, and MacDonald lived modestly. And here's another lovely photo of India Jane. It looks like she's sitting on the table, although I think her leg is on the ground there. I think she's leaning on it, and Robin seated in the chair. Okay. India Jane and Robin, yes. Mark's children at Turlough Lodge, their father's London house, 2005. That's that photo. Okay, back to the article. He was from a completely different social set, and I also think Robin did not want him in the business, one of Robin's friends said of MacDonald, adding that he was a Canadian. Oh no, not a Canadian. I mean, they're only a Commonwealth country and also have the British monarch as their head of state, but oh no, not a Canadian. What? I don't get it. Do we not like Canadians now, Brits? I don't understand. Thought you were friends. Okay, the alleged detectives provided Robin with tapes of women tearfully claiming to be wronged ex-lovers of MacDonald's and saying he had fleeced them. Actually, the women were out-of-work drama students. Oh, wow. He was fleeced. Wow, this was terrible. Oh, saying he fleeced them. Oh, I just repeated the word. Oh, my goodness. They really did. They did a number on him. Wow, what jerks. The hired investigators also called on India Jane in the summer of 2006, frightening her when they insinuated that they had a lot of information about her. It was highly improbable, unreal, and very, very unpleasant, she told me. Somewhat typical British understatement, I would say. It was very sinister. These people were thugs. India Jane hired her own detective, who managed to track down one of the people involved. He said it was Robin, she told me. She subsequently listened to the tapes, which were crackly and fuzzy, she said. I can't imagine anyone being taken in by that crap. She added, it was very cruel. The intent was to ruin Robert MacDonald. I would then seem to be influenced by a famous financial fraudster. Meanwhile, that summer, David Winmorgan, Mark's longtime PR man and friend, who had started working with Robin at Mark's behest, delivered a dossier of the material on the tapes to Keith Dovecants, a reporter at the London Evening Standard. The idea was to break the sensational story in the papers before Mark or India Jane knew about it. Good Lord, this is bizarre. Oh, and how rude and how awful to do to your family. These people treat one another abominably, and they use the media to do it. How terrible. Win Morgan said that, although he felt certain that Robin was sincere in his belief that his sister was being taken, he suggested that he tell his sister what he had learned from the investigators. But Robin demurred, thinking she would not believe him. Oh, you won't believe me if I tell you, but if I go behind your back and have this broadcast in the media... Oh, good Lord. India Jane says her brother told her the same thing later when she confronted him. But you were so infatuated, she says Robin explained. I believed I was acting in the best interest of my sister, Robin informed me. My father was too ill at the time to have any additional worries. Okay, right, sure. I'm sure it was total, interest for his sister. No, weird motivation there at all. Okay, continuing with the article. In the course of fleshing out his story, Dovecants spoke to India Jane and to Robert MacDonald in the presence of lawyers MacDonald had to hire, and he was introduced by one of Robin's investigators. He was introduced by one of Robin's investigators to two of the women on the tapes. After concluding that they were frauds, Dovecants notified Robin, who, according to the story that ran in the Evening Standard on October 13, 2006, met with the man who had supplied him with the tapes and also concluded that he had been duped. The story quoted Robin apologizing, saying he was in absolute despair because he had believed he was, as he later told me, acting in the best interests of my sister. She refuses to accept that, but it's true. Well, perhaps he even believes that. Perhaps he even does. I asked Dovecants if he felt he had been set up. I am not going to tell you what I think the motive was for giving the story to him. It appeared to be an honorable motive at the time, he said. MacDonald received a cash settlement from Robin and had all his legal costs paid. He also got an official apology. So did India Jane. Characteristically, she never discussed the matter with her father. I'm having a bit of a problem with Robin, was all she told him, she says. Sort it out, was all he replied. It's worth noting that nobody involved has sought to recover the $400,000 Robin paid the hired investigators. Nobody wants to draw it all out, India Jane said. Well, it's nice when you have enough money that you can just let 400 grand slide. Whatever. Keep the change. I wish I could pull a nice little fraud. No one went to jail. Nobody had to recover the money. Wow, if you want to go scam someone, I guess go scam Robin Burley. He'll just take it. Gee whiz. I mean, that's not actual advice. I am not recommending that anyone actually commit crimes. I am strongly recommending, imploring everyone, don't commit crimes. Don't try to defraud Mark Burley or India Jane. Not Mark, he's dead. Certainly don't try to defraud the dead. That would be silly and I guess would require a seance. But don't do that, and don't try to scam the living either. That would be bad. Although now I'm just trying to imagine trying to crypto scam a ghost using a Ouija board. Again, I'll stop trying to write comedy bits. That's not what we're here for. Okay. By then, Robin had also used hundreds of thousands of pounds more from the business for his own expenses without telling his father or India Jane, who was all this time his partner in running the clubs. According to India Jane, she learned about the missing funds only when Cam Bathia, the finance director of Annabelle's, came forward to say he was planning to resign because he could no longer continue to dole out cash to Robin. Robin, however, is arguing that he had every right to take the money for his expenses because of a deal he had struck with his father, a deal Robin says his father later forgot he had made. Oops. Robin, according to the agreement, would have his salary, not have, like have, but halve, as in one half, his salary of more than $200,000 in exchange for 10% of the profits from Annabelle's. Actually, I don't know why I feel that just over $200,000 is rather a low salary for the job that he's doing, especially living in London. I mean, 2008, it was a while ago, but it was still extremely expensive to live in London. London has never been a cheap place to live. Okay, in fact, those profits had doubled since he started managing the business. Well, okay, he was doing a great job then, I guess. Certainly worthy of at least a raise. The deal, an associate of Robin's says, was contained in a letter that Bathia sent to Robin's accountant. I know nothing of such a letter, and Cam never mentioned it to me, says India Jane. A person close to Robin summarized his position. Robin's not looking for charity. He's not like a dog being given a bone from the table. He feels he's created something and should be compensated. The will was changed on a false premise. He didn't steal the money his father thought he did. Bathia is not commenting. In September 2006, after Mark learned about the money Robin had used, he threw him out of the business. And India Jane took over completely. The staff was told Robin was taking a sabbatical. Okay, so if I had to bet, Mark was slipping. He wasn't super involved in the company any longer. Did they make a deal with a letter that was sent to Robin's accountant? I don't know. If that had happened, one would assume there would be a copy of the letter. I'm guessing that Robin was doing a great job running the club. He had increased the profits, so he felt entitled to more money. His father wasn't going to give him that immediately. Maybe they made the deal. Maybe he didn't. Maybe they didn't. Maybe Mark said he would do something. Maybe he even did send the letter, but didn't maybe he just did it to placate Robin. Or maybe he was, elderly and ailing, and maybe he did indeed make an agreement and then forgot about it. Who knows? But I suspect that Robin must have felt, hey, I'm doing a good job. And as we can tell, his father is withholding, non-demonstrative of anything positive, really, really cold withholding jerk. And I imagine that money being such a big thing, the club, the money being such a big thing, I've seen this before in families like this. The money becomes the thing. And so daddy won't give me love because daddy has no love to give. But daddy has money, and daddy has clubs. And the clubs and love are the money. The clubs and the money are the love, or rather the proxy for the love. So if I can't take daddy's love, if daddy won't give me the love, he can give me the money and the clubs. And if he won't give it to me outright, I'm darn well going to take it. And I bet especially because he was successful, Robin felt entitled to take the money. I guess legally, maybe technically he was not, but maybe morally he was. I don't know, but businesses are run not on morals and ethics, but laws. And if he broke the law, that would have been a problem. So I imagine that's why Dad said, bye. On October 26, 2 weeks after the Evening Standard story hit, so that's the one I guess about MacDonald, Robin married Lucy Ferry, who had formerly been the wife of Brian Ferry, the lead singer of Roxy Music, with whom she had 4 sons. I teased this before the break. And just a little point of interest, so we all know who we're talking about. Here is Lucy Ferry. That's her in the front. That's Brian Ferry, Roxy Music lead singer, in the back. And, of course, solo artist. Here they are on their wedding day. And if you can read the caption, you've gotten a bit ahead of me, that she died age 58 while on holiday in Ireland. That won't be mentioned in the article because it had not happened yet, but we'll come back to that. And, if you are a Roxy Music fan, you will recognize, look at me, I typed it wrong. I've got Ferry on the brain, so I typed it twice. Where's the album cover? Here you go. See the album cover for Avalon? That's Lucy. You can't see her face, though, because she's got her back to the camera and a helmet on her head. So, anyway, there you go. Movie of the Week writes, breaking the law is a good way to lose your club, too. Yes, I suppose if they had improprieties in the way the club was being run, that could have been a problem. I imagine that's true in British law as well. I mean, any financial improprieties can cause you a legal problem. But anyway, we will come back. Here, look at this crazy photo. She's dressed up like a Marie Antoinette. Lucy Burley, model, photographer, and pro hunting campaigner. Yeah, one of, I can't remember. They've got 4 sons, the Ferrys, did. Brian Ferry has 4 sons. Otis, Merlin. No, I'm not kidding. One of them is Merlin. Tara, I think, is the 3rd, and I can't remember the name of the 4th one. And one of them is a pro hunting. And hunting in Britain, I think they were specifically talking about fox hunting. He, I think, got arrested because he maybe trespassed or did something in favor of fox hunting. He was a pro-fox hunting protester, activist. That's like a toff thing. Like, you're so posh that you're actually advocating for hunting foxes, which in Britain, like, foxes, some people consider them to be nuisances because they can be, but they're also just kind of like dogs, and they run around, and you'll even see foxes like running around the streets at night in London. I mean, yeah, I understand. If you have chickens or whatnot, they can be pests, but like, they're basically dogs. So advocating hunting, like terrorizing dogs with a pack of other dogs and then murdering them is like, a lot of British people love animals, and a lot of British people love dogs. And foxes being so close to dogs and being animals, a lot of British people aren't keen on the idea of posh people getting together and using packs of dogs to murder other little dog-like animals. Also, not to be like too depressing, but there's a lot of scandal about Movie of the Week says that's a weird thing to get arrested for. Yeah, indeed it is. But also there have been scandals with, I don't want to get into it because it's a really awful, depressing subject, but let's just say that if you were raising and keeping packs of dogs for hunting, you would think that you would take good care of them and treat them well. No. And I'm not even going to get started in the, oh, you mean they're mean to them? It's beyond that. And I won't go into it. If you're really interested and you have a strong mind and heart and stomach, you can look into it. It's not cool, you know. And they don't hunt foxes for meat. It's just for sport. So anyway, hopefully this isn't going to be a problem with YouTube. I have no idea what they get upset about. And hopefully that's not one of those things. But anyway, let's get back to the article, shall we? Okay. Oh, wrong one. Wrong tab. Let me find my Vanity Fair article, which... Here it is, hurly-burly. Okay, back to the article. So Robin married Lucy Ferry. Mark was invited to the wedding, but did not attend. India Jane, however, did. It was yet another rocky misstep for Robin in a father-son relationship long fraught with tension. Robin desperately wanted his approval, and Pup's approval was very spare. India Jane told me. She added, "He was highly motivated, Robin, and his motives were dubious." Well, yes, when your father withholds love and approval, yeah, people often get weird. Then they can become very unpleasant, have very unpleasant personality traits as a result. Okay, so growing up Burley. Adding to this dysfunctional stew is the perception among India Jane's friends and Robin's that their mother always favored her sons. Well, gee, let's add some more unpleasantness to the mix. Good heavens. Annabelle is unabashedly on Robin's side. Someone close to Robin told me. India Jane was always a Cinderella figure in the background. Oh no, how terrible. Explained Lynn Guinness, a longtime dear friend of Mark's. The young woman apparently did not marry well enough or behave to suit her family. India Jane refers to herself as an old hippie. Lady Annabelle told me the relationship between her children is not a subject I can discuss. As a mother, I want to keep myself out of it. Well, as a mother, you should parent your children. But that's just me. I think parents should parent. India Jane, what is this mentality? Mark, Annabelle, they're both like, we're going to have children, and then, I don't know, they can be, mauled by tigers, they could just get into all sorts of trouble, they could be alone, crying, miserable. Well, whatever, they could just sort it out themselves. Why would we ever talk about this? We have illegitimate children to have with other people's husbands and wives, and, people who may or may not have unalived their nanny in an attempt to unalive their wife that they were tired of. We hang out with those people and laugh, but, let's not talk about how gee whiz, these people. Misery. Okay. India Jane calls Lady Annabelle and Mark quite eccentric parents, whom she claims to have adored. Do we see possibly a problem in adoring parents that don't really love you? That are distant, hostile, cold, uncommunicative, disapproving. But I adore them. Loving people who don't love you back creates a lot of problems. There's a whole industry, a couple actually, that involved in helping people get over issues like that. Good Lord. Okay. And Lady Annabel, in turn, describes India Jane in her memoirs as wonderfully eccentric. Okay, keeping in mind that for the Brits, the term eccentric is kind of like a not a backhanded compliment. It's a sugar coated insult, is it not? Eccentric. It means, bat you know what, insane. But we tolerate them. I was always being shunted around, India Jane says of her childhood. Movie of the Week says, you're not kidding. Yeah, I know. It's where where Southern Americans get their like, oh, well, bless your heart. Oh, that doesn't mean bless your heart. It's not a pleasant saying. It's, it's like calling someone a sweet summer child. You don't mean that they're sweet. You're being, you're being insulting in it with pleasant language. So I was always being shunted around, India Jane says of her childhood. At one point, she had to give up her small bedroom so that her father would have more room for his boots and shoes. These people have hundreds of millions of dollars. She had to give up her small bedroom so her daddy could have more closet space for his footwear. Imagine doing that to your child. She later became, I'm sorry. She later became a model for the painter Lucian Freud. For those of you who don't know, Lucian Freud, the painter, now deceased. Freud, yes, that Freud family. Freud as in Sigmund Freud, but Freud also as in Matthew Freud, the PR guy who used to be married to Rupert Murdoch's daughter. That guy. Oh, yeah, and, he was married to Pidge for a little while, too, wasn't he? One of the Countess's Spencer, meaning one of Princess Diana's brother's ex-wives. Anyway, it's a small world. It's a very small world amongst these people. But Lucian Freud, let me put it this way. I don't know how old India Jane was when she modeled for Lucian Freud. I would not want my child modeling for Lucian Freud. I would not want my daughter modeling for Lucian Freud at any age. I repeat, at any age. You catch my drift. Cool. Continuing. And I'll repeat the sentence, but I have to edit it a little bit, and you can read it on the screen for the word that I don't want to say lest I upset YouTube. She later became a model for the painter Lucian Freud and began collecting antique 7-letter word, starts with E, ends with A. It's explicit material that the general population would restrict viewing of. I think you catch my drift. Because of being in a state of undressedness and being engaged in activities that people would not want done in public for the most part. I think we all get what I'm saying. I'm trying to be careful for YouTube. I apologize. Continuing with the article. Her first husband, John T. Colchester, what a great name, John T., was an interior decorator whom she had met when she was an art student. Despite her pedigree, India Jane did not make much money as an artist. Well, that's usually true of most artists. And her marriage to Francis Pike, during which she went off to India for a period, how appropriate, was, one of her friends told me, her attempt to discover the discreet charms of the bourgeoisie. Well, that sounds like a nice way of saying she was slumming it. And kind of a scuzzy way to refer to her former husbands? What, her bitter rough? Ugh, sounds gross. Robin was an ongoing source of sadness and guilt to Lady Annabel after she allowed him to enter the tigress's enclosure at Aspinall's. She tended him through the years and years of surgeries that could begin only when his face was fully formed at 16. So poor Robin had to go through pretty much his whole childhood with a, harmed face that he couldn't even get treatment, like proper cosmetic surgery for, reconstructive, until he was 16. Awesome. Despite his disfigurement, Robin never had any trouble getting girls. Gee, I wonder why. But he always bore the scars of his father's neglect. He got more overt attention from Jimmy Goldsmith than from Mark, says a friend of Robin's who was close to the family. He felt that a betrayal. Well, and indeed it is. According to Lady Annabel, Robin and Jimmy did have a very close relationship. I don't know whether that affected Mark. Mark never said anything. Well, of course. I kind of wish someone had given Mark a swift boot to the backside to see if he would say something. Something. Maybe keep doing that until he finally says something. Something. Robin, whom friends describe as impulsive and quick to anger, hurt boy, took up his stepfather's cause when Goldsmith formed the Referendum Party, an anti-European Union offshoot of the Conservative Party. In the early 1990s, Robin supported Renamo, a far right-wing political group in Mozambique. Oh my goodness gracious. Well, that sounds interesting. Can't say I know anything about that, but it sounds a little dangerous, maybe. Robin also became convinced that Augusto Pinochet, the former Chilean dictator, was being wrongly hounded by Spanish prosecutors seeking to try him for human rights abuses. And in 1998, Robin helped arrange for him to stay in a fancy estate outside London. Well, that's an interesting choice. I have to say that even among Pinochet supporters, they tend to agree that Pinochet did things that would be considered human rights abuses. It's just the people that support Pinochet and his behaviors tend to think that they were okay to do, that they weren't, quote, abuses, unquote, even though, they were. But anyway, in the 1970s, Goldsmith had gotten Robin a position in the U.S. with his Grand Union supermarket chain, and some years later, Robin started his sandwich business there and in England, when David Winmorgan delivered a letter of apology from Robin to Mark after the debacle of the tapes and suggested that Mark should forgive Robin. Mark, in turn, showed Winmorgan a letter from 20 years earlier, in which Robin had written, "I wish with all my heart that Jimmy Goldsmith had been my father." I am so sad right now. I actually have tears in my eyes. No joke. That is so incredibly heartbreaking. And the worst part of all of that, in a way, maybe not the worst, is that Mark Burleigh is showing someone this letter as though the other person is supposed to understand how hurtful Robin had been to Mark. But there's nothing hurtful at all about what Robin wrote. It's all the hurt of Robin. Mark should be ashamed of himself, ashamed that he made his son feel that way, that he wrote that line. Mark should be ashamed to show anyone a letter like that, ashamed to show what a horrible, horrible, horrible father and a horrible, horrible, horrible human being he was. Why would you self-own that hard? My goodness. I can't believe someone could self-own that harm before the days of the internet. It's truly impressive. Movie of the week. That is so savage. I mean, just awful. So sad. But the worst, really the worst part of it is then Mark goes on to have a child that he then doesn't care about. And this is, oh my goodness, for decades, I see this time and time and time again. A tale as old as time. Today, Lady Annabel is 73. Well, obviously she's a lot older than that now, but at the time the article was written, she was 73. When she and Mark married, she was 19, the daughter of the 8th Marquess of Londonderry. Her father, who did not much care for Mark, well, good call, was on his way to drinking himself to death. Ah, yes. Children of alcoholics. They bear the scars. Drinking himself to death after his adored and exceptionally beautiful wife, Romaine, died of cancer at 47. And when your children lose their mother, of course, losing their father to the bottle and then death is exactly what they need. Right, sure. In her fascinating memoirs, Lady Annabel recalls Mark's first Christmas at Wynyard Park, her family's vast estate. Mark remained quite calm one evening when Daddy persuaded the local vet's daughter to remove her clothes and dance without clothing on the dining room table while he drank champagne from one of her shoes, held impassively by Robert the butler. I think the thing I'm most horrified by is the unhygienic quality of drinking from someone's shoe. I mean, it's all quite WTF. Movie of the week, it's the first chapter of Dr. Spock's book. Oh, are you talking about children of alcoholics bearing the scars forever? Okay, continuing the article. Mark had grown up unloved, Lady Annabel told me. I think he had a miserable childhood. Because of his childhood, he was a fairly closed-up person. There was a reserve that people couldn't quite penetrate. Well, yes, that makes sense, but also don't then take that out on other people. Don't bring your own children into the world and take it out on them. Deal with your stuff. Deal with your issues. It's too bad Lady Annabel couldn't have helped him out of that, but she doesn't seem capable of any of this. Okay. Mark's New Zealander father, Sir Oswald Burley, was a painter of portraits of the British nobility. He was 50 when Mark was born, and unhappy with his striking and dramatic wife Rhoda, whom Lady Annabel describes in her memoirs as a bohemian hostess with a large circle of artistic friends. I'm sure they also had aristocratic friends. Rhoda reputedly maintained an affair with a Scottish lord. Well, I wouldn't have expected any less. Mark's sister Maxime was a renowned beauty who later married Count Alain de la Falaise and became an international society figure and fashion leader. Well, we talked about this a little earlier. Mark never stopped loving me, Lady Annabel said. The guy who cheated on her constantly? Okay. And didn't love your children and didn't even want to have children with you. Okay. He took on a paternal role and signed his letters Dad. Ew. I think he was absolutely incapable of being faithful. He was a serial adulterer. Like a butterfly, he had to seduce every woman. Low self-esteem, many such cases. Throughout, she added, he was always discreet. No, he bloody well wasn't. No, he absolutely wasn't. If he was discreet, you never would have known. He wasn't discreet. He hid it very well because he loved me. No, that's not how it works. Oh my God, these people rationalize the worst. They all have horrible parents who treat them horribly, and then they rationalize horrible treatment by others to them, and their horrible treatment of others. And this would all be well and good. Well, no, not. This would all be quite perfectly awful if it were just a bunch of consenting adults doing it to one another. But then they bring the children into it, and then you see how this just goes on for decades and centuries, and it never bloody ends. It's just terrible. But hey, content, right? Movie of the week. Ew, geez, lol at these people. I can't laugh. It's terrible. I mean, you laugh to keep from crying because it's just a horrible tragedy, just rolling forward through human lives. destroying these people's souls if they ever had them to begin with, if they even ever had a chance. And yet it's like, oh, but they have money, right? That makes it better. No, I think it actually might make it worse. Okay, so Lady Annabelle copes. He did it very well because he hid it very well because he loved me, and he was heartbroken when I left. You know, that last part, probably true, but it would require him having a heart. So Mark graduated from Eton, where he showed that he had inherited his father's ability to draw. In 1948, after which he lasted only a year at Oxford. That was a poorly constructed sentence. He was a sophisticated child. That's a terrible curse. Trust me, I know. His old Etonian housemate Michael Haslam remembers. He told me once his ambition in life was to have a nightclub, I guess because it was very glamorous. He had this passion for glamour and good things in life. He also had a penchant for getting people to do his bidding and make themselves look silly. He would make me these horrid bets, like walking around the square in my dressing gown. Oh, the horror. Walking in public in your bathrobe. I mean, it's basically what Vinny the Chin Gigante did for years, but okay, if you find that horrid. Haslam recalls, I got quite a lot of the way before I got caught. Okay. During his national service from 1948 to 1950, Mark ended up with British troops in Vienna. According to his fellow serviceman Elwyn Edwards, he was very amusing. He told me he had wanted to be in the intelligence corps. He wanted to be a spy, as his father had been in World War I. Okay, movie of the week, there you go. You wanted spies. It's not just Ian Fleming. Oswald Burley was a spy. Okay, his father had been in World War I, but the next thing he knew, he was sent to Camp Catterick in Yorkshire, shoveling coal. His father was painting Monty, Field Marshal Bernard Montgomery, at the time, and happened to mention it, so Mark was removed from Catterick and sent to us. He never made the intelligence corps. A bet. Yes, movie of the week. He made a bet with his friend that his friend could walk around the square in his nightgown, a robe, his bathrobe, his dressing gown. Probably nicer than your average bathrobe. Okay, so the intelligence corps. Edwards says that Mark supported himself while in the service by selling gentlemen's white handkerchiefs, which he bought at the military PX and then exchanged for dollars on the black market. Even then, he had the makings of a good businessman. Well, very clever. A dining area. Okay, there's a picture that didn't load. Okay, by the time Mark was 30, he was married with 2 young children, managing the first Hermes store in London. In 1961, he was approached by John Aspinall, who was planning to open the Claremont Club in an attractive Palladian house designed by William Kent at 44 Berkeley Square, later made notorious as the locale frequented by Lord Lucan before 1974, when he Cade, his children's nanny, having mistaken her for his wife, and then allegedly escaped the country with the help of his very rich friends from the club. Aspinall asked Mark if he wanted to start a nightclub in the basement. He had to go cap in hand to raise money for Annabelle's, but I was always certain of success because of the way he did up houses, Lady Annabelle said. So India Jane's first husband was an interior decorator, and her father was very good at decorating interiors. Major daddy issues. Daddy, love me. Daddy, love me. I mean, it's so obvious. You think everyone could see it in their own lives, and yet Freud needed to come about to explain this to people. It seems so obvious. But these people never want to talk about anything. They see everything with their eyes, and then they just go, oh, nothing to see here. Let's not talk about it. It's the see no evil, hear no evil, but they do know, and speak no evil, see no evil, hear no evil, but they do the evil. They do it constantly. Maybe it's the blinding yourself to the evil that allows you to do the evil? Maybe that's it. Okay. So, the founding members were charged 5 guineas, $14 annually to belong, and many of them continue to pay that fee today. Yes, the key to having a good club, if you truly want to have an exclusive club, you make your list, your membership list, by invitation only, and you have to, it's best to have members recommended by other members. If you attempt to keep your club or any other establishment exclusive by charging an awful lot of money, then you will only get people who are willing to throw an awful lot of money at the idea of exclusivity, whereas truly exclusive things aren't usually that expensive. They're just very, 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 very difficult to find your way into. That's the trick. That's the real trick. So whenever I see something that says, ooh, you're not allowed in this club or business or opportunity unless you have a certain amount of money to throw in that direction, that's how I know it's not actually the most exclusive thing, because that's not how the most exclusive things work. Back to the article. Don't ask me how I know that. Okay, so Annabelle's now has 9,000 members, each of whom pays up to $1,500 in annual dues. Thus, Mark was able to attract those who would not only pay annual dues, even though they might not eat there more than a couple times a year, but also pay top prices for the drinks and dinner served. So now we know how I assume it got less exclusive as they did that. Movie of the Week says, yeah, the good clubs are actually cheap. You just have to know someone. Expensive ones just attract tacky folks. Well, yeah, if you know the right people, you don't have to pay for anything or worry about getting in anywhere. And you don't have to be rich, famous, or anything. And you don't even have to be the kind of person that you would say, hey, that person's really connected. Sometimes the most connected people are basically anonymous. And honestly, that's the way to do it, man. That's the way to do it. Don't have eyes on you. Stealth. Move in the shadows and keep your names out of the name and face out of the papers. Taking a sip of my tea. Back to the article. Okay. In his eulogy at Mark's funeral, Peter Blonde, a fellow old Etonian, remembered running into Mark on the street before the opening and being taken to the unfinished basement. In the gloom of the cellar, lit only by a string of naked light bulbs looped around a vaulted ceiling, he outlined his plans for what was to become the most famous nightclub in the world. From its overcrowded opening night, Annabelle's transformed London's social life. Some of the old snobbish clubs, such as the 400 in Leicester Square, which required dinner clothes, were already on their way out, and Mark's more raffish set didn't have many places left to go to, apart from the Milroy on Park Lane, a private establishment with a nightclub upstairs called Les Ambassadeurs, and Siggy's on nearby Charles Street, which had a back room for gambling. Soon Mark was presiding over his own private zoo of social lions. Annabelle's quickly became the place to go, David Metcalf said. Men could gamble half their fortune away upstairs and pop down for a drink or a dance. European royalty and dowagers would rub elbows with, in Win Morgan's phrase, the right sort of young. The tastemaker. Mark Burleigh was there every night, watching the good and the great mingle, couple, and uncouple. Part of his genius at Annabelle's was to create a dramatic ambiance that felt both elegant and cozy, a series of marvelously scented small sitting rooms with comfortable sofas and big pillows, a bar on the side, and the dance floor at the back, with an eclectic mix of witty cartoons and dog paintings on the walls. Nina Campbell, the young decorator he took on, who stayed with him through every establishment, told me, "As a woman, you could go to Annabelle's and they would look after you. The staff would make you a special drink. It was like a great big wonderful family. You felt embraced as you arrived. Annabelle's was certainly a great big wonderful family for one special crowd, and Burley accrued major glamour and social power. He never allowed the press inside unescorted, so nothing got leaked, and celebrities were left alone. In the beginning, everyone vaguely knew each other, which was not the case thereafter, says Mark's old friend Min Hogg, the founding editor of the World of Interiors. It was a terribly good place for the gang to meet each other. She adds, you were attended to like mad in surroundings that could be someone's house. I mean, this sounds perfect, of course. Oh, movie of the week says, dog paintings playing poker. No, the gambling is upstairs. The dogs playing poker paintings, that would be upstairs at the Claremont Club. But they're all fancy dogs. They're all King Charles Spaniels. And corgis. Excuse me, my throat is giving me some trouble. I'm taking a sip. One sec. Okay, back to the article. Throughout his 4 decades in business, Burley watched every penny, but spared no expense. He spent a year making trips to Brazil in order to create 3 weeks of carnival at Annabelle's, complete with samba musicians and topless showgirls. Valentino staged fashion shows at the club, and there was a New Orleans fortnight with the Preservation Hall Jazz Band, wow, and food from Antoine's. Ooh, did they get beignets? As well as a Russian fortnight when Viscount Hambledon came every night, hello, and danced on the tables in Cossack boots. Again, unhygienic, while gypsies warbled, these boots are made for walking, in Russian. I'd really like to hear that. And I think the term gypsy is now considered offensive, and you're supposed to say Romany, maybe? But this was 2008, so if anyone's offended, I apologize. It's not my word, it's theirs, and please don't get mad. Please? Okay. On the gala opening night, Annabelle met Jimmy Goldsmith, who was already a widower with a child and a remarried husband with a girlfriend. By 1965, their romance had taken flight. Jimmy was such a larger-than-life figure, he just swept me off my feet, Lady Annabelle said. I didn't mean it to go as far as it did. Oops. Movie of the week wants to see Medvedev dance to These Boots Were Made for Walking. Yes, I would like to see that too. Let's see. In the British upper-class tradition, the Burley boys were packed off to boarding school when they were 8. 8. 8-year-olds are little. They're little tiny things. 8. They're babies. But India Jane was allowed to stay home until her teens. So the ones you love the most, you send away to those awful, horrible, abusive places. And the daughter that you could, whatever, she gets to stay home. Okay. As a result, she saw more of her father than her brothers did, and he was always interested in her talent. When India Jane entered a series of art schools, he continued to be very supportive. Growing up, India Jane said, she was not particularly aware of her family's unconventional arrangement and structure. When little children go to bed, they don't know what their parents are doing. Some do. Some do. Movie of the week says, well, that might be less abusive than living with the parents. In some cases, that might be true, movie of the week, but if you've been paying attention to the news for the past several years, both in this country and in Britain, a lot of people have come out and explained how horribly abusive the staff of the and other students at these boarding schools have been, one of whom being Princess Diana's brother Earl Spencer, who was also packed off to boarding schools at a similarly young age, and his book explains how he was not treated appropriately, you know what I'm saying, okay, by an older, not older like an old person, not a senior citizen, but a grown woman who I think was like the dorm mother or like house mother of his dorm. An older, a woman, a grown woman who worked at the boarding school was inappropriate with Earl Spencer as a child, and he has described how he has had ongoing difficulties in life. He's had relationship issues. He has problems with women. He has difficulties. He's been married, I think, 4 times. He's not a reliable husband. He's got lots of problems. He's dealing with it, I guess. He's admitting it. I guess that's, he's making steps in the right direction. I have not read his book yet. I've wanted to. But no, I would not say that sending your child off to boarding school at 8 is, unless the child is at risk of like imminent death in the house, generally sending your child away to boarding school is not the greatest thing to do to them, especially if they are that young. If anyone is further interested in a subject such as this, look up Ampleforth College, for example. Look up if you just look on, say, Wikipedia, look at the list of famous graduates. I think, I want to say that Andrew Parker Bowles, Queen Camilla's ex-husband, went there. They've had some scandals along these lines, and things have come out, and people are writing about it, and there have been articles about it, whatever. I don't want to go more into that. We can't really talk about that right now. So 1 second, let me get back to the article. Okay, so back to the article. Pup, she recalled, India Jane recalled, was around for tea. He was a familiar figure when I was little. Robin was a different story. I think what Robin needed was someone to put his arm around him and tell him he would be all right. A friend of Mark's said. Mark couldn't do that. It was contrary to his whole nature. When Annabelle went off with Jimmy, Jimmy was the complete opposite. He was very good at wearing his emotions on his sleeve, and he built Robin's confidence up. Well, thank goodness someone did. Robin and Mark had a sort of love-hate relationship. A parent should never hate their child. A parent should never hate their child. A parent should never hate their child. And if you have a child and they need an arm put around them and to be told that they'll be all right, it's your job to figure out how to do that. It wasn't that Mark couldn't do it. It was that Mark couldn't be bothered to become the person who would. End of. Stop making excuses for people. Stop passing it on. Stop pushing it forward. It's like inheriting a horrible debt, adding to it, and then passing it on to your child. Wrong. Bad. Stop it. Ugh. Okay. So, another missing photograph. Mark lavished his attention on his growing business. Again, bad choice. You are buying into a world, Mark Burley's life, and how it should be lived, says his one-time number 2, Gavin Rankin. Mark completely changed the face of civilized dining in London, revolutionized it. If only he had revolutionized civilized parenting, he might be actually worthy of this article. With Mark's Club, which opened after Mark bought out Seagys in 1973, Rankin says, he took the concept of an English men's club, turned it on its axis, and made it far nicer than any gentleman's club. In 1990, when Mark could not find a health club to meet his requirements, he opened the Bath Rackets, complete with onyx-lined shower rooms. Well, that will show soap scum like anything. I feel sorry for whoever has to clean that. Harry's Bar, which he opened in 1979, is still one of the most elegant and expensive restaurants in London, while George, which he opened in 2001, is far more casual and attracts a younger crowd. People would always pay for the frills, Rankin says, and if you could be unassailably the best, then the market was yours. All the clubs and restaurants are located in Mayfair near Berkeley Square. Although Burley traveled to Hong Kong, Brazil, and New York with the stated intention of duplicating Annabelle's, he really just wanted to see what was going on, says Win Morgan. He never started anything he couldn't walk to. He invented the concept of the walkable city. Okay. According to Willie Landells, who did graphic design for Mark, having lunch was one of his great occupations. What are you doing today? I'm lunching. He lunched mainly at the clubs, and one ate much better when one dined with him, because all would try to outdo each other trying to please him. He was very spoiled that way. He was surrounded by codependent people that way. Staff and dogs. The indispensable element that permeated all of Burley's establishments was a carefully chosen staff who tended to stay for years and thus could be counted on not only to greet members by name, but also to know their likes and dislikes. Mr. Burley was ahead of his time, says Alfredo Crivellari, the former manager of Annabelle's, who worked there for more than 35 years, until his retirement at the end of 2007. He headhunted earlier than anyone else. He would go round and find the best. When Burley interviewed Crivellari for a waiter's job, he asked only 2 questions. Are you married? Yes. Do you have a mortgage? Yes. You start work on Monday, he said. He knew I was committed. Ah, committed. That means you're stuck. You need me more than I need you. That means he wanted someone desperate. Are you married? Yes. Do you have a mortgage? Yes. You're desperate for money. You're stuck. You have to pay. You're going to show up and you're going to do whatever I want. If the man had said, no, I'm not married and no, I don't have a mortgage, but he was an excellent, excellent waiter, he wouldn't have been hired. Mark Burley was a control freak. He was an untrusting man and a control freak. That's my diagnosis as an armchair empress psychologist. Although Burley was slow to bless and quick to chide, Rankin said, he was also keenly aware of the staff's importance. Everyone was made to feel vital. He once revoked the membership of one of his best customers at Annabelle's because the man had been rude to a waiter. I can always replace you, but not a waiter. Okay. Well, I actually kind of admire that. I mean, yeah, he can replace a waiter. Sure, he can. But I do like that. Don't be rude to the staff. Nice. The customer isn't always right. In the manner of a feudal lord, Mark took care of his own, provided doctors, paid for weddings, gave extravagant gifts, wrote gracious notes. When a waiter left to go back to Thailand to begin a restaurant and the business failed, Mark went to Thailand, paid his debts, and brought him back. That's actually kind of lovely. But it also, people who are that generous, they usually do it as a way of controlling people. If they give you more than you're actually contracted, and it's not just like a bonus or a gift, it usually is a way of buying fealty. It's a way of buying people. Buying people. Buying people. Insecure and lacking in trust. Control freak. A sad, sad situation to be in. He seems like a very sad, lonely, isolated man. Unhappy, I'd say. Okay. No one was ever told to retire, but after they stopped working for him, he would pay for a taxi to bring them back for 1 hour a day so that they would have to get dressed and have a good meal. Okay, I like the good meal, but forcing someone to get dressed and come to your place seems a little bit of a command performance type of a thing. Bruno Rotti, the manager of Mark's club, said that when he stopped working full-time, Mark had a small bronze bust cast of him and kept it on a table at the club. So there will always be a Bruno, Mr. Burley told me. The motto for Burley's staff was, "It shall be done." Quality is only met with precision, said Sir Evelyn de Rothschild. We couldn't do anything without his notice, said Rotti. That young lady's hair has grown a bit too long. Have it cut or put it up. It's a bit untidy. There is a basket left out in gents. He was a perfectionist, David Metcalf added. If he was there, they always knew it. He'd always watch and not hesitate to comment, often in a very caustic way. I would have thought by now. I would have thought the very least you could do. I'd be rather grateful if... That meant he was furious. Mohammed Ghanem, a barman at Annabelle's who functioned as Mark's butler, concurred. Such sarcastic remarks he made. You'd never forget the bollocking, and you'd never do it again. Hostesses trembled in Burley's presence. People were very nervous to have him stay or eat, Landell said. He was quite severe. I remember once we stayed somewhere, and in the middle of the morning he told the hostess, the way the breakfast tray was laid was very bad. The napkin must be very white and very starched. Orange juice should be served in glasses of this shape, not that. As though the hostess is choosing the glass? Probably not, but anyway. Where were they staying? I hope it wasn't a personal home. It was a woman's personal home, and he was insulting her orange juice glasses? I would never invite him back. I really wouldn't. Or I would just invite him back, and I would just grab a container of Tropicana or Minute Maid and literally put it just on the table in front of him and go, here you go, plop, and see how he enjoyed that. You don't even get a glass. If you don't like my glasses, well, you don't get one. You can drink out of the carton. Here you go. Have fun with that, Mark. Boy, oh boy. Never happy, this guy. He seems like he was never happy. Okay. Despite the scowls and judgments, Mark had many friends who were awed by his taste and adored him. He was always coming to the rescue of people, said Lynn Guinness. He had a very dry sense of humor, a sense of the ludicrous. He was a marvelous man in so many ways, Metcalf added. On a good day when Mark wished to be, he was charming. But charming and having charm are completely different. He was very selfish and self-involved. Yes, charming and having charm. Lady Annabelle said, It's quite difficult to live with a perfectionist, but the thing is, life with Mark was fun. Our breakup was because of Mark's infidelities, not because I fell in love with Jimmy. Yes, but perhaps you fell in love with Jimmy because Mark was constantly cheating on you, and that's not nice, it's not love, and it's certainly not respect. Crazy. India Jane calls her father the funniest man in the world. Oh, you know what's funny? Not wanting your children. LOL. Ha 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 ha. Oof. Although she was clearly his favorite and visited him daily, Mark himself seemed to take his greatest pleasure outside his family and outside his marriage. He was not the sort of person to have a woman make him happy, Mohammed Ghanem explained. He was very happy with his dogs and working with staff. Ghanem, 58, spent most of his life with Burley. He was 18, one of 11 children, when he was sent from Morocco through the recommendation of a member of the English Parliament to train to be a waiter at Annabelle's. I'm going to reread that sentence. He was 18, one of 11 children, when he was sent from Morocco through the recommendation of a member of the English Parliament, I'd like to know whom, to train to be a waiter at Annabelle's. To train to be a waiter at Annabelle's. Mark Burley is a perfectionist. He wants everything done precisely correct, An 18-year-old from Morocco with no training is being recommended to be a waiter at a place that requires precision in all things. Did the young man speak English at the time he was recommended by a member of English Parliament? And how would the member of English Parliament had met this 18-year-old, one of 11 children, which tells me his family was probably pretty keen to get rid of him and have him work and make money because they didn't have any much to give. I'm just guessing. I'm sure he was already out and about working at 18. I'm sure when you come from, many places, but Morocco, and you're one of 11, and and if he was 58 in 2008, when he was 18, that was 40 years earlier. So, what was that? This is 2008, the article. So 1968. Yeah, I'm guessing, how did a member of English Parliament get to Morocco to be charmed by an 18-year-old Moroccan boy? And he goes, oh, you know what? You should come to England to train to be a waiter at this incredibly exclusive club with my friend, I guess, who needs precision in all things. Movie of the Week says, someone likes 'em young. Well, 18 is a bit too old for some people, But maybe not the member of Parliament, or maybe that's what happens when you age out. You know what I'm saying. This is all very sus. When his visa was up, after one freezing month, he wanted to go home, but Burleigh's secretary tore up his return ticket and enrolled him in school. Against his will. This doesn't sound charming. He would come in to work at night. Mark paid his rent for 7 years. I'm a very unlucky human. I have never met anyone this charmed by me, this generous with me in my life. Mark Burleigh paid this young man's rent for 7 years. He paid this boy's rent. He turned this young man, into a rent boy of sorts. Early on, Gannon recalled, "Their Christmas was coming, and Mr. Burleigh wanted me to spend it with them, with Lady Annabel. And from then until now, I spend Christmas with the whole family." How generous. How odd. Gannon, married with 3 daughters who have all attended college, is perhaps the ultimate family retainer. Mr. Burleigh taught me how to dress, how to behave, how to talk to princes, dukes, and princesses, he said. Once, I made a gin martini for the Queen. What a lovely mentor. He did not take one holiday during the last 15 years of Burleigh's life, but he would accompany him to Spain, Morocco, or wherever he spent his vacation. Well, that doesn't sound like freedom. And the man has his own wife and children. Why did he not take vacations with his family? Every Sunday, he would go to his employer's fashionable house, Turlough Lodge, across from the Victoria and Albert Museum, just to make a special cocktail for Mr. Burleigh. Were any other employees doing this? Any other waiters? Any of the bar ladies? The waitresses? Very odd. Close relationship. Mark was also pampered on a daily basis by his caregiver, Elvira Maria, and her niece. His staff saw him more than his family did. According to Gannon, he said his dogs came first and his family second. Toward the dogs, man's best friend. You know, those things that you can train to sit and speak and come when you call. Toward the end of his life, when he lived on one floor and was unable to walk, Burleigh let George, his black Labrador, have the bed with a comfortable mattress, and he slept in a reclining chair next to the bed. His other dog Tara, was an Alsatian. I used to talk to George the dog in order to bring Mark back to life again, Sir Evelyn de Rothschild said of visiting Burleigh in his last months. Lady Annabel said she was the one who introduced her first husband to dogs. I come from a doggy family, she told me. I'm writing a book about Mark and his relationship with dogs. Everybody knows about the clubs and his love life, so that is the angle I've taken. He adored dogs. He told me, I go to these dinners and I sit down and think, God, I wish I was in my lovey, comfy bed with my dogs. There is nothing I like better. Well, I'm sure many people would agree. Lady Annabel keeps her own dogs in Colfax and Fowler duvets, and she has written an entire book about one former pet, Copper, a mixed breed, who she swears used to ride the bus by himself and visit pubs and hold his paw up to cross the road. India Jane provided the illustrations. According to the Daily Telegraph, Mark left more than $200,000 in his will to the People's Dispensary for sick animals. I thought it was going to say to his dogs, but that's lovely. And during his lifetime, he had a beloved mutt named Help. That would be an interesting way of trying to get your dog. Imagine having to call for your dog named Help. Maybe you could just put on the Beatles song and let it play and wait for the dog to come back. Okay, Help. Beloved mutt named Help that he had rescued from the Battersea Dogs and Cats home. A rescue dog. Help did not care for the 2 St. Bernard puppies Mark bought, so they were sent to Austria to be there for him when he skied in the winter. Well, I hope somebody was taking care of them and giving them lots of love. I could never do that. Mark thought St. Bernards looked good in the mountains. Dogs are not a fashion statement. Pets are not a fashion statement. Don't do that. Win Morgan said, okay, once the actress Joan Collins was invited to Mark's house for a small fancy lunch. After she was seated, she screamed and pushed her chair back. Under the table, Blitz, the huge Rhodesian Ridgeback, had been licking her ankle. Oh, I'm sure she's dealt with worse. Take that dog out of here, she cried. I'm imagining Alexis Colby, Carrington Colby, whatever, from Dynasty shrieking that. Mark gingerly coaxed Blitz out from under the carefully laid table, and the dog lay down in the hallway, his head between his legs, looking miserable. Oh, I can see that face. I can see that. After Mark finished his first course, he excused himself and went out to apologize to his pet. I'm so sorry, Blitz, he was overheard to say. That bitch will never set foot in this house again. Oh gosh, I really hope YouTube doesn't ding me for the B word, but it was so great. I just had to say it because it's so funny. First of all, calling Joan Collins the B word when that was like, that's her character in Dynasty was a mega B. And the fact that it's sort of the irony of saying it to a dog because a female dog is a B. So you know what I mean. It's funny. Although, I hope that Joan it says he was overheard to say. I hope Joan overheard him saying it, but he was probably maybe he wasn't too polite to say it in front of her. And if she didn't hear him say it, well, she knows now. It was printed in Vanity Fair. Okay, end of an era. No one wanted Mark to sell the clubs. His friends and family all implored him not to. Some, including David Tang, the Hong Kong mogul, also asked him to forgive Robin. Tang reported that Mark said, "Nobody talks to me about Robin. I don't like it." Ugh. Mohammed Ghanem got away with more than most. "He's your son, Mr. Burleigh. Doesn't it matter? It's only money. My God, you lost Rupert. You're not going to lose Robin just because of a stupid mistake." Yes, thank you, Mohammed, the voice of reason. Thank you, Mohammed. Robin was Ghanem's boss at Annabel's, and Ghanem and others were ordered to report daily to Mark on how things were going. Ghanem thought Robin worked very hard and did an excellent job. "Robin has a heart of gold," he told me. Well, his sister and daughter might disagree, and baby mama. "He does whatever you ask." Robin said, "I love the clubs, and I believe I had a real feeling for what my father created." But it was too late. Okay. Ganem was pushing Mark in his wheelchair in Marrakesh last June when the moment came. Mark had gone to Morocco to buy a house on a property developed by his friend Lynn Guinness and his former son-in-law Francis Pike. India Jane and Miranda Brooks were also visiting. The house was nearly ready, and Mark suddenly started demanding last-minute changes. According to Ganem, they all told him it was not possible to do those things. Ganem said, "I tried to tell them, stop, don't tell him what to do, because I knew immediately, that's it, that's the end of this house." He only said, "Mohammed, it's time for lunch." Then, instead of calling the lawyers from Casablanca, who were ready to close on the property, Mark summoned Richard Caring's lawyers from London, who arrived the next day by private jet. Caring told me he had been trying to buy the clubs for more than a year. It was a bit of a shock when it really happened. Mark had already grilled Caring thoroughly and had gotten him up to a great price. "If you believe in quality, top-of-the-pile sparkle," Caring said, "you don't do better than this." India Jane was beside herself. She had thrown herself into running the club since Robin's departure, and her father had said nothing to her about any sale. "I really did cry and cry, and I am not a crier," she said. When Sir Evelyn de Rothschild suggested countering the offer, Caring reminded Mark that they had had a deal. After the sale, Lady Annabel asked Mark to give each of the children $10.3 million, but Mark reportedly just rolled his eyes. Jerk? I would not want this to be my obituary. I really, really would not. When asked what he planned to do with all his money, he replied, "I'm going on a cruise." Mark had never discussed his will with his children. India Jane and Robin, once easygoing siblings and partners who would play jokes and have food fights, actually saw each other when Robin came around to collect some suits and ties of their father's, the day before India Jane heard that her brother was contesting the will. "It came out of the blue," she told me. "I have absolutely no animosity towards Robin," whom she described as a wild, wild creature. She added, "Sometimes I wish he'd go live in the Congo forever. It's all so unnecessary. At times it makes me want to weep." He'd go live in the Congo forever? What? No, movie of the week. This article is not terribly flattering at all to quite honestly any of these people, except Mohammed. I mean, he seems like a pretty stand-up guy. Although, the hanging out with the boss is a little weird. The big question now is, how can Robin possibly break the will? It will be very difficult. Mark made sure that a doctor came from London to examine him for his mental competency at the time of the sale, and the doctor said he was compos mentis. Robin's side argues that it wasn't his regular doctor. The same procedure had occurred earlier when Mark made his will, which leaves India Jane his house, last evaluated at $35 million, and allows her to live off the income of the trust until her son is 25. Thus, the trustees, not India Jane, have the final say. People think it is something I am in control of. I'm not, India Jane said. According to Miranda Brooks, India Jane told Robin that, if he would wait for the period of probate to be over, she would try to help him if she could. Peter Munster says, "The will cannot be changed unless there is evidence. The reason is that a minor is involved, and he is the main beneficiary. If the will were to be changed, the trustees would have to go to court. If it would be changed to the detriment of a child, the court would be loath to change anything." When Mark was operated on for his knee, Lady Annabel said, "He drank quite a lot and mixed it with painkillers, and he kept having falls." She said he fell 2 weeks after the operation and fractured his hip, and he would not do physical therapy. Well, who was looking after him? This man should not have been walking around on his own. "That's when it all began," she said. "During the time Burley was drinking and taking painkillers," He apparently was disoriented, his memory was impaired, and he was not himself. Well, yeah, that adds up. He was taking a whole cocktail of medications, Lynn Guinness explained. When they changed that, the confusion stopped. Oh, I have an elderly family member that happened to. 1 second, and I'll tell you a little story about that one. Elderly member of my family, senior citizen. Yes, they had health problems. They were given a bunch of medication. And they were basically in a zombie state. This woman would be taken out of bed, seated in a chair in front of a television. I mean, she was fed, she was bathed, she didn't have bed sores or anything like that. But you would go to see her. It was the lights are on and nobody is home. She could not acknowledge people. She could not recognize people. It was like there was no one there. This went on for years, possibly decades. I was a child and young person at the time, so I don't know exactly when it started, but shortly before this woman's death, she was taken off at least some of the medication. And she became lucid. She spoke. She recognized her child. She was present. I can't explain why it happened before. Why was she overdrugged? Because it was easier to deal with someone who's a zombie sitting in a chair in front of a television set than an actual human being you need to deal with? I don't know. I was a child and it was out of my hands, but looking back, it wasn't a pretty situation. So it makes me wonder if the family wasn't around Mark Burley and he had nothing but people who were paid to take care of him. He's being drugged, he's drinking, he's falling. Why is no one at least monitoring his physical condition? You would think that would be pretty easy to do, right? I guess no one around him really cared that much. It's too bad for him. Okay, oops, sorry. Yeah, when they change, where was it? When they changed the medication, yeah, when they changed that, the confusion stopped. Guinness said that every morning when he was with her, he would get the figures of Annabelle's take from the night before. He got this incredible deal from Caring. How does someone off his head manage to do that? India Jane asserted. My father was right on the button regarding his business. His caregiver, Elvira Maria, a beneficiary in the will, agreed. Mr. Burley was never confused about business or money, especially if it affects me getting some of it. I asked her if what I had been told was true, that shortly before he died, he had spoken of a rapprochement with Robin. He never mentioned that, she replied. Robin's partisans disagree about Mark's mental state, and they feel that Robin needs to be more fairly compensated for giving up his San Francisco businesses. Mark's confusion was bad for a few months, particularly at the time that Robin's part in the investigation of India Jane's lover came to light, says David Winmorgan. He had short-term memory loss until he died. I have a question, and that would be, if he sold his San Francisco businesses, was he not, compensated if it was a sale? Did he not receive money? So why would he need to be compensated? I mean, I think he should have been compensated from the will just because, for fairness' sake, because he was running the businesses. He had done a good job. What's $400,000 between these people? It seems, it seems like this was maybe something that Mark wanted to do anyway. He wanted to just screw over Robin, and he just found a really good, Robin just stepped into it and gave him, it's like, here you go, set him up, and then Mark just went boom and tipped the ball into the basket. You know what I mean? Kind of feels like that. Anyway, okay, getting back to the article. Sean Plunkett, a cousin of Lady Annabelle's, who is now married to Andrea Reynolds, Klaus von Bülow's former companion. Oh boy, that's a whole stream unto itself. Andrea Reynolds, Klaus von Bülow, and actually Sean Plunkett. He's an interesting person. There's a Sherlock Holmes connection there, but that's way off into the weeds. We're not even going there. Okay, so Sean Plunkett phoned Mark frequently from upstate New York. He was losing it for the last year, and I detected it on the telephone. He told me he was not living a happy life at all. Peter Munster disputes that. If lawyers were to call witnesses, there are several people, such as myself, who would stand up in court and say that Mark knew precisely what he was doing. You know, you can get people to show up in court to say anything. People to support one side, people to support the other side. How about the truth, guys? How about the truth? Mark was making plans to visit Lynn Guinness again in Morocco the night before he died of a massive stroke on August 24. India Jane was with him at the end. His death came as a terrible shock to Lady Annabel, who said, "I thought he'd go on for years. He was so primped." Of the sale, she said, "I think maybe in his heart he felt that nobody could run it like him." India Jane arranged the funeral at St. Paul's Church in Knightsbridge, ooh, fancy, posh, which was attended by Margaret Thatcher, of course the former British Prime Minister, Prince and Princess Michael of Kent, of course the first cousin of the late Queen Elizabeth II and his wife, the Duchess of York, who would have been Sarah Ferguson, the former daughter-in-law of Elizabeth II, and staff from as far away as Australia. And you know, it's interesting that the funeral was attended by Margaret Thatcher, big get, and then it falls down. Prince and Princess Michael of Kent, they're lesser British royal family members, and the Duchess of York, ex-British royal family member, disgraced ex-British royal family member. And the Kents, they're a little bit of that, you know, they'll show up at the opening of an envelope kind of, you know, people, like, oh, there's a good payday, maybe a nice dinner, let's go, kind of, you know. Duchess of York, same. Big fall off. You would think, you know, maybe somebody a little bit more happening, maybe like Prince William, I don't know. Apparently not. Big fall off. And staff from as far away as Australia. The most dramatic moment came at the end, when the coffin was carried from its place before the altar towards the door of the church, said Peter Munster. It was followed by Mark's driver, Don, leading his two beloved dogs, George and Tara, whilst a piper played a lament. For now, probate is frozen. Oh, but the St. Bernards didn't get to come. Did the St. Bernards get to come? Did they bring the St. Bernards from Austria? I don't know. For now, probate is frozen, so the real value of the estate is not yet determined. Mark would be horrified at the publicity, Lynn Guinness says, and India Jane, who has a new romantic interest, well, of course, a rare clocks dealer, swears that all she wants to do is play with the baby and feed the kittens. I am very, very boring. I beg to differ. Lady Annabel speaks frequently with both Robin and India Jane. We talk all the time, India Jane told me. She prattles on about dogs, and we don't talk about it. These people. And what if the case ever gets to court? Miranda Brooks says, Jane's got no illusions about that. If her mother has to appear in court, we know who she'll favor. Oh, this is all so heartbreaking. Does India Jane really think her mother would testify for Robin against her? I don't know, India Jane says, and I really do mean it. I can't even imagine. It's a bit of the unthinkable. Okay. So that's the end of the article. And I've been going for quite some time now. And even though I have not finished at all the topics I've wanted to cover this evening, I'm going to have to end this stream. And we're going to have to come back tomorrow to finish up with or hopefully finish up with the exciting story of Zac Goldsmith. We haven't even gotten to all the details about Zac himself, his first marriage, how that blew up, who his surprise second wife was, and her relationship to another former member of the Goldsmith family, Zac's brother Ben, and how he lost his first wife, their big tabloid breakup, how an American rapper figures into this whole scheme of things, more tragedy, more scandal, more tabloid headlines, more. How does Russell Brand fit into all of this? Well, you're going to have to come back and find out on the next stream tomorrow. So, for now, if you've been listening, which I think only one person has been, go ahead, like, share, subscribe. If you subscribe, you will be able to know when the next stream is coming, because we don't have a regular schedule just yet, hopefully in the future. But we're just sort of hanging out, chatting, exploring some topics. And thank you, Movie of the Week. Yeah, there is more to come. It gets very interesting and exciting. As I said, more lovers, more breakups, more scandals, more tabloid headlines, fights, and celebrities. And we will be back tomorrow with more, hopefully the exciting conclusion. I hope I can wrap it up tomorrow. If not, well, then we might have to go another day. But for now, I want to thank you for being here. Thank you, Movie of the Week, my diehard fan, my one and only at the moment, hopefully more to come. And I am the Empress, saying good night, goodbye, see you tomorrow, see you in the future. Have a great day, and thank you for being here. This has been French Dip Empire. And if I can end my stream. See ya.